So let's call the meeting to order, but before we do, welcome everyone. The director is going to read the preamble and then we will take the roll call.
Thank you, and welcome to everyone once again. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law and section 101.021 of the codified ordinances of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Recusals from any vote due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to the taking of any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, we ask that you use the raise hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raise hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile version and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you, and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking on the raised hand icon again and mute your microphone. We will also be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located on the bottom of the WebEx screen. Call-in users can unmute by using *6. All meeting activity is being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube. All requests to speak on a particular matter submitted through proper channels have been considered. We have also received emails from those who have provided written comment on a particular matter. Proper channels for comments are listed below. Communication with members of this body must follow proper channels for consideration. Any comments received by this Wednesday, 12 p.m. deadline are collected by City Planning staff and disseminated to the Commission members prior to any scheduled meeting. Proper channels for public comments include sending an email to cityplanning@clevelandohio.gov at that address with a comment or a letter, calling and or leaving a message at 216-664-2210, sending a letter or dropping off comments at City Hall at 601 Lakeside Avenue. I'll also walk through the meeting rules and procedures, so if you're new to this process, you have an idea of how we proceed through each agenda item. The chair will call each agenda item, Chair Curry, and then each applicant will be invited to proceed through their application. Each presentation should be completed prior to any questions and comments from the Commission in order to facilitate a smooth presentation. Once the presentation has concluded, the chair will ask planning staff to summarize design review committee recommendations and any public comments received. The deadline for public comments is noon the Wednesday prior to any regularly scheduled city planning meeting and will be read into the record. Any comments received by the deadline are distributed to Commission members prior to the meeting through Dropbox. Staff will also identify any members of the public present and scheduled to speak. If you're here to comment on a public hearing item, you'll also be notified by the chair when it's your turn. Public comment is allowed at the discretion of the chair, and any individual providing public comment is permitted 2 minutes.
Oh my God.
Any individual providing public comments is permitted 2 minutes to speak to the agenda item in which they have an interest. The chair will then request a recommendation from staff if applicable, and the Commission will then begin deliberations and project review. Any Commission member except the chair may make a motion at any point after an agenda item has been.
All right, Michael, let's call the roll, please.
Anthony. Luker.
Yes. President, I'm sorry.
Curry.
Present.
McRae Scott.
Present.
Sargent.
Present.
Slide. Chair, we have a quorum.
Okay. We are going to come back to the first item when Shannon Leonard gets here, which is the form-based code. But we'll move forward first with the lot split and consolidation, which is permanent parcel number 002-02-049, 1348 West 78th Street. Is Michael Tomsick here or online to speak to the?
Madam Chair, we actually have to do the minutes first before.
Oh, sorry, I did. Since I wasn't here, I blocked it out.
That's okay.
So first, you're right. First thing to approve the minutes from the last meeting, which we have here. And I was not present, so I will abstain. But we'll need a motion from the previous minutes.
Move to approve the minutes as presented today.
Second. This is motion and a second for the November 17th meeting.
Hoover,
Yes.
Kirby,
Abstain.
McBride Scott,
Yes.
Sergeant,
Yes.
Slyder. Abstain.
Motion carries. All right, back to the first item, which was 1348 West 78th Street. Michael Tomzek, here to present this. It's a lot split and consolidation.
Hello, I am here
Mm-hmm.
and along with the property owners.
Okay,
I believe 3 of them are joining us.
okay, that's great. And I think we have your slides, so go
Yes.
ahead and share the project. Thank you.
So this involves new construction of a 2-family dwelling. Currently, the property is vacant. On one side of the property is a single-family house. On the other side is a commercial building. It's a relatively narrow lot, and the challenge is providing garages for each of the dwellings, and then in the future, separating the 2 dwellings for future sale of each of the dwellings. So there would be a shared driveway to the rear garages.
Is this a consolidation or a split?
Actually, it's not consolidation. It would end up being a lot split.
You split it into 2 garages.
I think the owners should address their intent for the lot split.
Okay, can you show us the lot split then? The actual proposed split?
I don't believe they've had the surveyor draw out an actual lot split.
Why, well, I'm not sure how this got here. So how did this get on the agenda?
So, yeah, that's a great question, Madam Chair. So the applicant really wanted to be on the agenda, and at this time, the staff would recommend a disapproval of this item due to lack of information, as well as we don't feel this lot split is necessary because there would be a requirement for an easement list. And so that is our staff comment at this time.
Right, to the applicant, first of all, we cannot approve something or even see it without actually seeing the lot split. So there is no drawing of what the actual lot split would be. Second, there's no understanding how you can split the lot where the garages are actually together like that. So we cannot even make a motion on this one because there's really no understanding of how you would split this.
I
Frankly,
think one of the owners should step in and address their intent. Because maybe a lot split isn't really needed.
it is not, to be honest. It is not needed to split this, to build this, and you still have to go through the process, but not required. It's actually, doesn't seem possible to do a lot split, to be honest.
If I can speak up, I'm one of the owners of the property here. And if we don't have to do the lot split, which I understand, I think the intent is to, I believe we might have to, because we're hoping to sell these as individually owned units and then have an easement along the driveway where unit 1 in the front can access their garage in the back, and unit 2 can use the front of the driveway to access their whole unit in the back.
I would suggest you go talk to an attorney. I don't even see how you would actually split the lot, is what I'm saying. There's no sense of how you would split it.
Well, regardless, Madam Chair, to the applicant, what I would recommend, because there's a lot of moving parts here, I would recommend you do your homework. You talk to fire, you talk to the building department, you talk to the zoning administrator, because regardless of what you are attempting to do here, you're gonna probably put encumbrances on other parcels, other buildings on the parcel, or other parcels that might surround this. So I think it's a little more complicated than just saying, approve this plan.
Yeah. Plus, we really cannot approve a lot split without the actual lot split drawing. It's just, we've never done it, so we can't do it, actually. So, to the question to Michael, is this a tabling or a denial? What is this? I've never seen this. A postponement?
You can also deny the.
Yeah.
But I think without a survey, it's.
To clarify, to Mr. Lozak, if we deny it, does that eliminate his ability to come back because it's considered a different application? Or if we postpone it, does that allow them to get their ducks in order?
Yes, to the chair, to the commissioner, that means that, they cannot continue to disapprove it, they can't come back with the exact same proposal, they have to change the proposal.
I think we can postpone it, my sense is, but to be honest, this should have never been on the agenda.
Madam Chair, I vote against that.
Okay, all right.
I motion to disapprove.
We have a motion to disapprove.
Yes.
We have a second. A motion and a second. Call the roll.
Lucre,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
McCray Scott, Sergeant.
More information survey. My sense is you do not need a lot split, and it actually doesn't make sense. You can still, I would work with actually a land use attorney to help you do whatever you need to do if you want to sell these, but you currently don't need one to build these. So, anyway.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, should we go on to the next item or, design review or go back? Is Shannon here?
Shannon is still making her
Okay,
way through the building.
no problem.
She had a traffic delay.
No problem. Southeast Design Review. This is SE 2023-006. This is a demolition of a 2.5-story residential structure seeking final approval. And we have Brett Parsons from the city, so I don't need to swear you in. 12412 Miles Avenue.
Hi, I'm on a web
Zoom.
call, and I'm sorry, my camera, every time I join one of these, is literally just a black screen, so I'm not sure why that happens. My name is Jillian Blino. Brett's actually not with the Demo Bureau anymore. I'm a demolition compliance officer. Brett went to the Department of Community Development in July. So I'll go fairly quickly through this. We are proposing demolition of 12412 Miles. It sits between East 124th and East 126th on Miles. The property has been in state forfeiture since July this year. So what that essentially means is it's readily available for public or private investment. However, we typically see that when things remain in forfeiture, that's a sign of serious distress that the property is in and that there's a lot of disinterest. This property has been vacant since at least 2013. We received 8 formal complaints on this property and we boarded up 4 times. We brought this to design review in March. That was our second time at design review. They asked us to try to get the CDC involved to see if they had any contractors who might be interested, and none of them were interested. They all thought that the building was too far gone. Since then, this has become a big priority for our director, Sally Martin O'Toole, and somehow a complaint made it to the director of Urban AI, Liz Crow. We've also received emails from the district chief inspector, which I believe was Keith Gudot, and from the VPU unit chief, which is vacant property unit, Paul Kafari. So we've had a lot of people really honest about this. And so we took it to design review again last month, I think, earlier this month, I can't remember exactly. And we finally got approval. That was our 3rd time. So we are seeking approval. You can go through the slides. It's really not in great shape. The whole front porch is collapsing. So the brick does look okay, but most of the wood frame components are deteriorated. The plaster's deteriorated. There's dumping on the site. So we just really feel like there's very little that we can do here. And it's unfortunate, but this is kind of where we're at.
Okay. Questions?
I move approval.
I second. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion or questions? Michael, call the roll.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry.
Yes.
McCray Scott,
Yes.
Sergeant,
Yes.
Snyder. Yes.
Motion carries.
Madam Chair, I do have a point
Sure.
of clarification. So who owns this parcel when it's done and who's it titled to? And, you know, I understand we have to get rid of dilapidated and blighted structures, but it would make me feel more comfortable if there's like a strategy, right? You know, we're working with our partners at the Cuyahoga County Land Bank. We're working with the 10-year housing plan folks to kind of come up with some long-term solutions to these missing teeth.
Yeah, so
Um,
I agree. Yeah, I mean, we agree here in the demo bureau that needs to happen, and I know that building and housing is moving forward to some targeting of neighborhoods. So the owner is still, when something is in state forfeiture, it does still remain in the former owner's name. So state forfeiture doesn't mean that the state has any ownership over the property. They just have a right to transfer the property. So the former owner is, her name is Michelle Goolsby. So she is still the titled owner, but the state has a right, because she didn't pay the taxes, to sell the property to collect those taxes back.
I guess a bigger issue that I'm having too is I thank you for the clarification, but that, you know, how do we track the disposition of these properties so that they don't fall in out-of-town developers and people who might have nefarious, you know, objectives. So that's all. And I know things are in the works, but I think we need to start talking to one another to figure out how we address that.
So when I worked for the previous administration, at the time, the arrangement with the county was that when the state forfeiture list would come up, municipalities would get a right to take properties prior to them going to sheriff sale. But in cases like this, we wouldn't take the property because it has a structure. So hopefully, if the structure's gone, that a process is able to kick into place and it comes into the city land bank. And we're able to cut off the pass exactly that. So.
Okay. Thank you.
I think if it's okay, the director, maybe there are only 3 items. So can I go through the design review and then we'll come back just for the people who are here? Because I imagine most people here for the design review. What?
For number one, so.
Oh, they're here for the zoning. Oh, it's most people, then we'll go back. So you're welcome. I just never know who people are here for.
I just thought you wanted to be here.
Yes. Okay, so we're gonna go back to the zoning matter, which is, I'm gonna read it, and I'm also gonna, since people are here to speak to this one, I will just tell you how we're going to kind of proceed through this so that we'll be able to have public comment. Because for zoning matters, they are public hearings, which is where we'll take public comment. So this item is ordinance number, which is to be determined, so it's not numbered yet, to supplement the codified ordinance of Cleveland, Ohio of 1976 for the Cleveland Neighborhood Form-Based Zoning Code, which consists of chapters 3001 through 3007. And so what we will be doing for the form-based code is first we'll hear a presentation from staff. So we'll either be both the director and Shannon Leonard, and they will present this in its entirety. We will allow commission members first just to ask questions for clarification. We will not make comment or discussion, just to make sure we get all of the information. Then we usually hear sponsors' testimony. This can be sometimes if something's rezoned, an owner, architect, applicant. In this case, since it's zoning, we likely will not have that. unless it's a council person or something to that effect. Then we open up the public portion, so we will take comment from anyone who'd like to speak first in favor, and then we'll take those who are opposed. We also can take, if you just have a question, that's fine too. And so before you speak, I will call on you, ask that you state your name and address, or simply your organization. And the one thing we'll ask is that you please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, so we can allow everyone to speak and get through the agenda. So that will be how we will be proceeding. So first, I think I'm turning it over to Shannon, or the director.
Yeah, I would like to make some introductory comments and then turn it over to Shannon Leonard, who is our chief zoning planner. I think right now we're at a really interesting time in the United States. There's been a lot of momentum across our country to reform our zoning codes. We recognize the existing codes can be inequitable, as it can privilege those who know and can afford to work within the system. That it currently prioritizes unsustainable uses as we think about, how our cities and regions are growing, and as a barrier to growth for small businesses and smaller scale developments. And so we really believe that this change in the way we think about our zoning code has benefits that Shannon may address during her presentation, which includes more flexibility in allowing diverse housing types, such as accessible dwelling units, cottage-style homes, missing middle housing, and this can provide options for many people with different incomes, as well as all ages and abilities. We believe in increasing housing supply to relieve any existing housing pressure that may be in our neighborhoods. That this will legalize existing uses that are currently what we call non-conforming. So, for example, 100% of two-family structures in certain neighborhoods are non-conforming and therefore, ineligible for certain aspects of reconstruction or financing. And then this recreates predictable historic development patterns and creates more fairness for small businesses and home-based businesses. Further, we really believe this aligns with significant studies that have been accomplished in the past decade, including the Vibrant Neo 2040, which talks about how, as a region, we can grow more sustainably as more and more people are moving and sprawling outside of our county, but also with the Cleveland Housing Plan that was adopted a few years ago, which does have goals around implementing form-based zoning citywide, as well as updating zoning to allow for a greater variety of housing types in order to create more equitable housing patterns. So we're really excited. It's a big day. Chief City Planner Shannon Leonard has been working really, really hard on this. And so we're eager to share with you the text and the maps associated.
Thank you, Director. Good morning, Shannon Leonard, Chief Zoning Planner in our City Planning Commission. I'm going to walk you through the project as well as the how we've gotten to this point, and kind of just talk to you, and then we'll get into the meat of it, which is the rezoning itself that you all probably received a notice for in the mail. So first, I just want to give a special thanks out to all of my colleagues in City Planning Commission, as well as this commission, as well as
it's not presenting the same way on WebEx, so I might have to go back to. I could download this PDF real quick so it can show better. For that, Shane.
Yeah, that's fine. While you're doing that, I'll just go ahead and just say thank you. This project has been years in the making. It started prior to the current mayor under Frank Jackson with the commission, as well as our former director, Freddie Collier, and our former chief planner, Kyle Reese. They really got this project off the ground, really going with the commission and there's been a series of changes. There's been some council changes, administration changes, and really a new project manager. And so we really had to pick up and finish the project, and we had a lot of help from the outside as well as internally. And then we met with communities, revisited them with communities, including the Huff community and the Detroit Shoreway community. And so there was a variety of things that went on that it would not have been possible to get to this point in this project without the input from all of the stakeholders across the city. And so I just want to say thank you for that. It's been quite a task. I'm really sorry about this morning.
Impressed by our voting.
I just don't understand why I'm the only one on there. Like, why is that? I know why I'm on there, but it can't be.
Okay, good.
Thank you. But again, these are all the people that have contributed. There's been quite a bit of contribution across all departments within City Hall that have to touch projects for the permitting process, as well as various organizations, professional organizations, the community development corporations of Burtonville, Clark, Fairfax, Amicos, Northwest Neighborhoods, in Midtown, and then all of the council of people of the wards that are represented in this project. So first, I just kind of want to talk a little bit about Mayor Bibb's goals and how that relates to what we are proposing here today. So the mayor proposes for affordable housing and pathways to home ownership, violence prevention and public safety, arts and neighborhood amenities, environmental responsibility, connectivity and accessibility to daily needs, so things like grocery, healthcare, jobs, transit, quality education, as well as economic vitality, so standards and regulations that support business developments from the small mom and pops all the way up to corporations, and then modernize City Hall and the permitting process and neighborhood revitalization. And what I hope that you gather by the end of this presentation is that all of his goals are wrapped up in this foundation of laying a new zoning code for the city. And what I mean by that is everything that is in our community today is a reflection of the laws that we have as it relates to what you can do with your private property. And those laws are the zoning code. And so how things are built within the city are dictated by that zoning code. And so for example here, you see that there's a difference in two family districts. And when we talk about public safety and health and equity and being able to get to things that are within close proximity, our daily needs, our everyday life, it really is dependent on that built environment. And so our zoning code regulates that. And so these are two different communities that are both zoned two family, but you can see the disinvestment in some and then the reinvestment in others. You also see with townhomes, what we're looking at is the building between the sidewalk and the parking, or is there a pedestrian entrance directly to the sidewalk? And why that's important is if you see in the first image on the right-hand side of the screen, is you really have this blank facade of garages. And that really produces some safety concern, not only for vehicles, but also pedestrians that are walking up and down the sidewalk, as well as just everyday living. In the bottom picture, it's also a townhouse development, but because of the way that it's structured and sits on the parcel itself, and then its frontage features of some steps and some proper glazing on that first floor, it allows for eyes on the street, which makes the street much safer. Another example, when we talk about commercial structures on the top part of the screen, is an Aldi's in our steel yard, and it's surrounded by parking. That exact same building is also in a downtown format in Pittsburgh, but it's dramatically different for people of all accessibilities. So whether you're walking, or you have maybe some difficulties, it's a lot more beneficial and more pedestrian friendly to set that building closer to the street and place the parking in the back. And most people would agree that it's a much more friendly, walkable area that also feels safer in general. And then there's also, when we talk about drive-throughs, our code currently really permits the drive-through that you see on the left versus the drive-through on the right that is much more, again, walkable, pedestrian friendly. And why we keep reiterating walkability, pedestrian friendly, that's really just to make our streets and our homes and our neighborhoods much more reinvigorated, if you will. This is another example of a gas station. Currently on the left here is the East 55th gas station, the Shell. The top picture is what it looks like if you were, walking down the street, and the bottom picture is an aerial showing you this is the kind of gas stations that are permitted by right under our current zoning code. Whereas on the right, we have made changes to the code over time that would allow some of this in some of the other places. where you have the retail store on the front, but you put the island, the gas pumps, if you will, in the rear. It also makes it safer, not only for cars, but also for people within the neighborhood. And then it also provides, higher quality options in terms of retail. Another example of how the built form and how land use regulations affect the places we live is an example of here on the left on East 90th Street, which this entire street is pretty much a parking garage. And a lot of people tend to avoid this street when they're walking, even the people that work for this institution, because it's not vibrant. It doesn't feel safe. Whereas if people were walking down the other side where you have what's known as a liner building or a building in front of the parking garage, or activating the parking garage so that it's not just a blank parking garage wall, it's a lot more friendly and safe environment. So how does our existing Cleveland zoning code work? And I kind of just want to go through this really quick just to give you an idea of why we're where we are today. And what we have is what's known as Euclidean zoning or conventional zoning. You'll hear that or see that be used interchangeably. And what that means is that our entire code is set in a chronological order in which you have the most restrictive uses, at which you can see the upside down triangle here, up to the broadest uses at the top of the triangle. So that's everything from open space and single family up to unrestricted industry. And generally speaking, you can have more restrictive uses and the least restrictive uses, but you can't bring the least restrictive uses down into. So you can't have any type of retail in your residential districts, but residential can always go in retail districts. And there's a variety of other regulations around that. And then we also have height and area districts. So height districts are how high you can build on your property. And then the area districts really regulates how much of your lot can be structured. And so under our current code, it is really easy and to build the picture that you see on the top, which is Clark Avenue. So this is a street that was built after the zoning code was implemented, and the requirements of the zoning code require vast amounts of parking, structures to be set back away from the street. It's really auto-centric. Whereas the street on the bottom is Lorraine, and that was built long before the zoning code ever was thought about. Our zoning code is 94 years old. And so even before that, most of the city was built out. Many of the lots were subdivided prior to our existing zoning code. And so what have we done to try to align what the vision for the city is to make it more healthy, to make it more sustainable, to make it climate resilient, to make it pedestrian friendly, and have connectivity between things and people. People have to go through the variance process, which is a public hearing, to get an exception to the zoning code. There's been planned unit developments around town. So what that is it's a project and there's legislation just built around that existing project. We've made overlay districts. We've formed new zoning districts. And then we've revised the code little by little over time, which has really resulted in a code that looks a lot like this, that can be very cumbersome, very hard to understand. It is tedious, and in a lot of times, different sections contradict other sections. It's also out of alignment with our Connecting Cleveland 2020 plan, which is our comprehensive plan, and a variety of other plans that have been adopted by the city and the commission. And so with that, city planning embarked on this as we, as a city, as our department, as a commission, and as the mayor, we have common goals that our city is walkable, accessible, connected, sustainable, safe, healthy, equitable environment. And as I showed you, the ways to get there is through the zoning code. It's really to lay the foundation regulations of what you can do with your property or what can be built on your property, or to correct the problems and the conflicts of the existing zoning code that create inequitable places. And so how did we get on this path to a new code? So this journey has started many years ago, almost I think about 10 years ago or more, where the urban form overlay was introduced. There was a best practices in zoning symposium here in the city of Cleveland with ULI. We introduced other overlay districts to kind of do what is known as a form-based code light, which is what the tools that we have available to get those walkable forms, but didn't necessarily have the capacity to do it across the entire city. We also updated our townhouse code The downtown code was updated, to allow for more types of residential and the adaptive reuse of old office buildings. There was a consultant selected to help with this new code, this Code Studio. We started the work in 2019, and then obviously COVID hit in March 2020, which significantly kind of delayed the project. And then we also passed some legislation with council around transit-oriented development and TDM strategies, which basically states that, you know, if you're within a quarter mile of high-frequency transit stations, you want some development around that transit and more density, if you will, but also removing the parking minimums at those locations. But you have to participate in a transit demand management program, so selecting things to provide alternative forms of mobility. And so what is the key differences between what Euclidean and the form-based code? So our Euclidean zoning regulates land according to use. So there's a real emphasis on use. That's that conventional zoning that you see on top. And then management happens, but it's not very clear management. And then there's form, and we compensate for that by having a variety of design review districts all across the city. Their regulations are the same for each district, regardless of context. It's generally a one-size-fits-all regulations. It's not really what you get in your neighborhood is highly unpredictable. And then the overlay districts are used as patches to regulate forms, whereas the form-based code allows for more mixing of compatible uses. It allows for car light or free alternative options, and it's just more equitable because it gives more options, not only in those things, but in housing and transportation. So what exactly is a form-based code? Essentially, a form-based code is taking all of those plans and ideas in a visioning process with the community and codifying it to get the community that we want and we predict to see when new development comes along. So some of those things that it regulates for are height. So whether you're a 4-story red building or a 4-story gray building, you're similar in scale and you provide visual interest when somebody's walking down the street, but the regulations allow for that. We also regulate for form, so that is, what is the building? How many windows, doors, things of that nature. Those are things that we often have done through design review of this commission, as well as landmarks commission, that we really push for, but they're not necessarily codified for. And so it leads to some arbitrary subjectiveness at times. There's also siting, so where is your building placed on your parcel? Is it close to a sidewalk? Is there a parking lot in front of your building? And then we still regulate for use. So we still regulate for compatible uses, but it's not the organizing structure of this code. And so our current zoning code, again, kind of just pushing this, is that it really separates uses, but it also separates people. There's a lot of driving, whereas the form-based code gets back to our original built form, which allows for a mix of uses, which allows for walkability. It makes our communities healthier and more vibrant. And so here are the steps to the implementation of this project. When I took over the project in 2021, there were several envisioning processes that I'll walk through with your own neighborhoods. But there were internal reviews across all departments within city planning. There were some educational opportunities. There were interdepartmental reviews with the various cluster that touches development. We had 16 people that are professionals and experts in these fields to review it and then give us their feedback. We consolidated all of those comments, and then we also had a formal law review, and we've actually had a couple of those at this point. We extended the contract multiple times with the code consultant, and then moving forward, as we got closer to this point, we made some corrections, we reorganized some of the items, and then we released a public draft on May 29th for the public to see, to review, to send in their comments. On June 9th, we set up a form-based code zoning workshop with the American Institute of Architects for Cleveland, the Urban Land Institute, attorneys, and American Planning Association, and then opened the doors to see after that workshop was over for the community. And what that was really designed for was to make sure that the regulations that we're putting forth to you today were producing the results that we wanted to see. And then there was another time for public feedback. There were some formal legal reviews. And then from August until a few weeks ago, we were having community meetings with the various pilot districts, and then here we are today. And so this just kind of walks through that public engagement process, going from July 2019, when we selected the consultant, when the other pilot map that we're not here today, the visioning charrette existed. And then from fall 2019 to early 2020, we met with Burton Bell Carr and Fairfax. And then in March 2020, COVID hit. And that's significant because it was a significant delay on this project and made some of these things a little bit more challenging. Then we met with the Huff community in November. There was a Freedom Zone performance live streamed for residents, which really was an artistic performance showing the challenges and negative implications of zoning and redlining in the neighborhood. There were more neighborhood meetings between March and May of 2021. And then there were internal revisions made for the public launch between May 21 and May 2023. And then there was a public draft put out in June. And then I went to a New Day and Huff festival in August. And then from September through November, we did community meetings with the Huff neighborhood and other communities to explore the form-based code draft. And so as we move into what this new code is, this is our current zoning code and where it's housed. This is the internet version of all of Cleveland's codified ordinances. Our current land use code, our zoning code, lives in part 3B, Title 7 zoning code. And those are chapters 325 to 329. And where this new code will sit will be Title 7A, Cleveland's neighborhood form-based code, and it'll be chapter 3001 to 3007. And if you look at this page here, you can kind of see how everything is organized based on the district. So we start with the urban garden district, residential district, then there's some standalone districts like manufactured house parking, housing park, and then there's some design review thrown in there. So it's really organized based around uses, and you can see the various things that have occurred through the years. So let's get into the actual code itself. So the introductory 3001 is really the legalese. What is the purpose? What is the authority? What is the application? And it introduces to you the new zoning districts. 3002 it brings you the zoning districts, which are then subdivided down to house scale, neighborhood scale, community scale, urban flex, urban node, industrial flex, urban innovation, and special. And within there's some subcategories. So what you see when you open the code is some images. And those images on the left-hand side of the screen are what these standards will produce. It's not necessarily that is exactly what they will produce, but it gives you an idea of the type of building form that it'll produce. And then there's always an intent statement, kind of telling you what is the purpose of this district and what are we intending to see here. And then you'll see a little snapshot at the bottom. So where you see urban flex here, you see UX3, UX4, and UX5. That represents the urban flex 3, 4, and 5 districts that are within this section. And that 3, 4, and 5 represents the number of stories that the development can have. And then there's always going to also be a summary of allowed uses. So if you have an ice cream shop or you want to open an ice cream shop, you would just go to this page and say, is my commercial use allowed here? If it says P, that means it's permitted. If it doesn't say anything, it's not permitted. And if it has a C, it means it's a conditional use that has special approval standards from this commission. And so what else you'll see is that this entire code is around site and building. And so these regulations are laid out like this. This is just an example of what that looks like within those districts that I just spoke of. And site is really important. I'll kind of define that in a minute, but it really leads to the flexibility of this code. And then within the code, you'll see there's a various size, dwelling units, amenity, walls and fences and so forth. And then building really speaks to the massing of the building. What does that building look like on that property? What is the height of that building? How much active space is on that building? What are the windows? How many windows, doors, things of that nature. And so the other really great thing about this code in terms of when we talk about the administrative process as well as readability by the common public is the usability and user friendliness of this. So if you want to build a new house, you're going to look at this section and say, what do I need to provide to the city to get my application through the permitting process. You would need to apply every one of these standards. But if you were doing something as simple as a renovation, you might not need to apply any of this, you may just simply need a permit. Or a change of use would only require, very few items. So I'm gonna walk through the rules of interpretation because that's really the meat of this code. That's all those standards you just saw. The ones in green, I'm going to walk through just so that I can point some things out. Things like dwelling units per site, that's pretty self-explanatory. Walls and fences, that's pretty much similar to what our existing code allows. And then setbacks also is where you set the building on property. And that again is fairly straightforward. So the general provisions, the reason why I wanted to show you this is because this is the crux of the flexibility in this code. And so it regulates around site and not necessarily around lot. So what that means is that a parcel or a lot can be a site, or you could have multiple parcels or lots to create a site. And there's some standards around that requiring street frontage or easements and things of that nature. The next thing that we'll talk about is the primary boundary line. And so this is really important because as you all may remember from earlier in this process, we learned that Chester Avenue, for properties fronting Chester Avenue between East 55th and East 90th, they can't have Chester addresses. And it has to do with the titling and things of that nature of this street. And so that creates sometimes of a challenge because if you're having new development along Chester, which is a much more right now it's not as commercial, but it is a large street. And many plans call for more commercial uses on some sections of Chester. And so with that being said, for the properties to the north and the homeowners to the north, the way that a building is structured on their lot is really important to make sure that we are transitioning properly between the two types of buildings. And so what this allows is some flexibility for the zoning administrator to work with the applicant and the community to determine what is the best primary boundary line, which dictates how that building will be built on that lot and where your pedestrian access and frontages and things of that nature will be. The next thing is to talk about site width. And this is really important as it relates to the first section of the standards. And what that really has to do with is how wide is your site. And so what this is basically saying is that if you have a driveway with a front, from the front of your property, then you need 35 feet width minimum. And then if you're from the side or the rear, you need less than that. And so that's really what site width is, just fully explain so that people can understand. The other thing in this code that we see all the time being requested through design review is that projects include some type of amenity space within their projects. Some type of outdoor amenity space, whether that's private amenity space or private public amenity space, they can share with the public. And so what we're saying is we're going to codify that, we're going to require 10%. If it's public-private, there's a little bit more bonuses in terms of the amount, etc. Square footage needed to reach that amount. The other thing in this code that is quite different that we again require to design review is how does the private realm meet the public realm? What does that streetscape look like? So what we're saying here is we're going to require a pedestrian zone or a furniture zone. So the pedestrian zone needs to be 8 feet, or the furniture zone needs to be 6 feet. And furniture means things like street trees, amenities, things like that. And pedestrian is free and fair for people to walk. And this is really important as it aids into creating more walkable spaces. And it is not uncommon for jurisdictions to regulate the sidewalks and things of that nature. The next is transitions. This is one of the best, I think, provisions in this code is that what we're saying here is when you have streets like Puff or Chester or Opportunity Corridor, and then you have residential districts behind it, we're going to require those commercial strictures to have a transition district. And what that says is that, as you can see in the image on the right at the top, is that if you're next to a district of less intensity or height, you have to be your building has to be at least 10 feet off the property. And anything over 2 stories needs to be, or 24 feet, needs to be set back an additional 10 feet. What we normally see is in reverse, and that's how a lot of people build taller than what the community expects, because from the front street, from the primary boundary line, if you set back, for every foot you set back, you can generally go up another foot or 2 feet, pushing that height onto those residential neighbors, and then they feel overcrowded, they feel like they're missing out on their light or their air, and so this really pushes it back to the street where it belongs. The next thing is street build out. So that's how much of the frontage or the side street that your building takes up. And this is really important to make sure that we don't have missing teeth, if you will. So you don't have, a building that's busy and then you have some blank parking lots and then you have another building. This is really to allow for that infill development that's continuous and congruous and really, again, puts those eyes on the street. And then the next is the massing. So really, if you look at the image on the left, that shows you this is like the envelope which your house or your structure needs to be built in. And that really sets the context for the street for new development. So it's really making sure that any new development is the same scale or the same width or the same height or it near that for your new next to your home or on your street. And so the things that talks about is height here. The other thing that it talks about is the story height and the massing of the building here. And so this is just an example of this district allows for 5 stories. And then it has a ground story height. What that means is we want high first stories. And that's really, again, to create a more equitable space, but also a more pedestrian friendly. It puts eyes on the street. And then we're also requiring those active uses. So you need 12 feet of active uses along the front. So you wouldn't want to put a bedroom here or what have you. You could put a kitchen here, but it needs to be an active space that people are coming. You probably want the store or something of that nature here to get those active uses at this location. And then the last section here is really about windows and doors. And that's really kind of telling you that you need a certain amount of glazing on your first story or on the side street, however have you. And it also regulates for blank walls. And so what we're saying is we don't want to see blank walls anymore. It's not safe. It doesn't create a walkable environment. It really goes against public safety. And so we're saying, let's add some small trees, maybe a living wall, maybe a non-commercial art mural, a foundation planting, something of that sort. And those are all things that we generally see this commission and Landmarks Commission and our design review bodies suggest happen on those types of spaces. We're just codifying for it. The next section talks about use regulations. So this code still regulates uses. It's just making sure more so about what is compatible rather than separating uses, because we know that certain uses are compatible with other uses, but our current code precludes them from being near each other. And sometimes that has to do with like our daily amenities, like a bank next to a restaurant, right? And so this section really talks through the use categories. It talks about principal uses, accessory uses, administrative responsibility. There's a permitted use table. It has some additional use standards. There's some use categories. This is really important because our current code has a lot of historic language and historic ways to identify uses. A good example of this is I'm a little bit older than a lot of my colleagues, and there's things like sanatorium or some more old-fashioned words, if you will, that are not quite everyday language today. And so this code really ups the language more into the 21st century. And then there's a robust list of uses within those categories. And then it talks about accessory uses and structures. So is that live work? Maybe it's an accessory dwelling unit, maybe it's a daycare, home-based businesses. And then that really talks about what types of uses can be home-based businesses. And so one of the great things also about this code as it relates to usability is that it puts all of the use categories into one chart. Right now, all the use categories are spread out between 25 chapters. And when somebody calls, they have to know, either the administrator or people looking at the code need to know what uses are permitted, and that kicks off the development process. Whereas here, they can easily say, I want to open up a kennel. Am I allowed to do that? You go down to animal care. and then you see that it has a P with a star. That means there's some additional use standards on the right. You would go to what that means. Or you would go on and see, is kennel considered animal care? The next section is development standards. This is in 3004. And this really gets into more of the heart of some of those standards in our code that fall again back into the design review realm. And it's around parking and access. So every section starts with the applicability section. Again, when you're submitting a permit to the city, you're saying, this is the type of project I'm doing. What do I need to make sure I include in my application? And then the person that's reading your application can say, this is what we need to review this. Is this complete or not complete? And this kind of goes in with the trying to expedite the permitting process and part of modernizing City Hall. So the first standards is parking and access. So there are no minimum parking requirements in the pilot form-based code project. And that's really because the city and several cities around the country have found that our current parking requirements are pretty arbitrary. And they don't lead to essentially it can cause the projects to be more expensive overall. And what we find is that even if you get rid of parking minimums, that doesn't stop people from building parking because people are going to build parking to get financed. And so we do regulate parking in terms of how do you access that parking lot? Where is your parking located? What are the standards for that? And then we also require bicycle parking. The next section is about landscaping and screening. So how do you landscape those parking lots or your side streets? What if you have a parking lot, how do you screen it from the public realm and people that may be walking? We regulate walls and fences, and then plants and plant material. And again, these are starting to get more into those things that are required every day by our design review districts. And then outdoor site lighting, again, is also another requirement of what that looks like. And that's really making sure that any type of outdoor site lighting you have is safe, but it doesn't bleed into other neighboring properties. And then the second to last section of the code is the administration part. And how is this code? So our current code really doesn't lay out the best organized way to administer the zoning code or how processes work, which is one of the reasons why they're doing a full review of the permitting process across the city. It's why so many projects for things like a fence or a simple sign can take 4 to 6 months or more just to get their permit. And we see that happen all the time. And that's just because there's a tangled web of process that occurs here in some cases. What this does is lays out the administration process within the pilot areas of this form-based code, or if this pilot code is extended to other areas. The city planning director or has designated becomes the zoning administrator for this section. And this is not unordinary, if you will. We already administer other parts of the code, such as the townhouse code or some of our overlay code districts or the sign code regulations. And so it also creates what is known as the administrative review committee. This is something you might know as a technical review committee in other communities, or an architectural review committee in other communities. And that's really bringing every single person in City Hall that touches a development permit to the table at the beginning of a project with the applicant and the property owner to ensure that everything in the application is there and that they get the proper feedback so that the process can run a little bit more predictably. And then there is the level 1, level 2, and level 3 approval processes. And so I'll walk through all of those. So the first one is level 1. And the last time I was here, I was asked to kind of explain what's the difference between how it happens today and how it'll happen in these districts in the future. And so level 1 is up to 5 units or 5,000 square feet development. And this is similar without the pre-application conference and the completeness review that kind of happens for up to 5 units or 5,000 square feet today. And so what this requires is that there's a conference with the zoning administrator to discuss the procedures in the code and advise potential issues to revise. Discussions are not binding in that conversation. Meaning this is kind of an informal conversation, but we're having it. The next is a completeness review. So the applicant decides okay, I want to move forward, I want to submit my application, I'm submitting it, I know what I need to submit, I've submitted it. The administrator has 10 days to notify the applicant in writing of a completeness or if they need more information. And this really puts the onus on the administrator in the city. And then from there, the administrator has 10 days of completeness to approve or deny the application. And this is no different than what happens in all our non-design review districts across the board for simple zoning review. Level 2 is 6 to 20 units or 5,120 square feet. Again, for each of these section levels, you're gonna have a pre-application conference. And then in this section, we introduce the Administrative Review Committee, which is that group of people from all across the city, from utilities to fire, to planning, to building and housing, construction and engineering, maybe urban forestry, maybe economic development, that come to the table and meet with the applicant and approve or deny a project within 30 days. They must approve that application once it's noticed as complete. And then after approval, they may apply for any other city permits or approvals. And then the level 3 is the 20 plus units or 20,000 square feet. Again, we have another pre-application conference. There's the Administrative Review Committee. And then from there, it has to go to the next level, which is Planning Commission. And that's not totally indifferent to seeing how the process has been working in the last year or so with our current processes. There is some administrative review authority within city planning for projects that went through design review, but don't necessarily have to come to city planning. And so the biggest difference here is that level 2, where they would see the administrative review committee rather than going through the variety of different design review committees throughout the city. The other thing to understand is there's administrative relief available by the administrator or this commission. And it's a percent that's dictated in the standards. And that allows for some flexibility in codes over sites that are quite different from other sites. All appeals from any of these processes will still go to BZA, or if somebody needs a variance, they would still need to go to BZA. And then zoning administrator can advance any application to planning commission review if necessary. The next section in here is something that we have all been asking for in our current code, but doesn't exist. But we have conditional uses. We have about 17 to 21 conditional uses throughout the code. And there's different standards throughout. And so conditional uses are in this. And so what conditional uses are specific uses that are generally have specific requirements to be allowed in a district. And so there's different things that require a little extra review by the planning commission to be allowed to happen. And so that kind of walks through the standards here and what they must consider in terms of whether to allow that use or not. And it really has to do with the context and the character, not adversely affecting neighbors, and it has to be done in a public hearing. The next section is the regulatory maps. This is where we get to talk about the new changes that are happening within the geographies and how we got to these geographies. So the 3 geographies that you're going to see today is the new economy zone of Opportunity Corridor. You're going to see Huff from East 55th to East 90th, and then you're going to see Opportunity Corridor at East 79th Street. There's another map, but it should come back before you go through, before this moves on to the council committees. And so that's the one on the top here, but that you're not seeing today. So how did we pick these 3 geographies, or 4, if you will? We really had a limited budget. So we really wanted to make sure that when we hired a consultant and we put all the years and staff and interest into this work, that we really got areas that were adjacent to either other large investments. So Opportunity Corridor or the Huff, there's been a lot of investments to spur new investment nearby. And that's really important because if you don't have permits coming in, you can't test the code. And so we really wanted to make sure that we picked very diverse areas to allow us to get, the most bang for our buck, if you will. So we wanted an area with diverse building typologies and uses. And what that means is that single family and residential streets is different than the zoning tools, the mixed use buildings on busy thoroughfares, or even legacy manufacturing facilities in industrial areas. And so we wanted a wide range of uses and building structures to make sure that we could apply and get as much as we could with the limited budget that we had. So a lot of times I'm asked, how are you gonna measure whether this form-based code is actually even working? Well, first of all, is it doesn't meet our goals. And some of those goals are, does the code produce predictability to the built environment? Is the community aware of what's happening and not surprised? Does the code enhance the character of the neighborhood and does it require context-sensitive design for new infill development? Does the code provide clear administrative procedures for project applications with easy to understand language and flexible options that still provide results consistent with the vision or plan? Does the code produce walkable neighborhoods that provide for all daily needs accessible by multiple transportation options? Does the code promote racial equity, social and economic inclusion, and cultural diversity? Does the code provide a solid regulatory framework for smart growth or sustainable development? Is it environmentally responsible? And does the code produce better economic outcomes for all? And so those are some of the things that we'll be measuring once this code takes effect. So this is the Huff form-based code pilot area. This is a map that we've shown to the community several times. We did make some modifications based on the community input at the last several meetings, which is along Chester. And some of what came out of this commission as, making some of those north-south connections more dense, have those higher heights. And then along the Chester, for the vast majority of it, where you have those single-family homes, bringing down the height to 3, and then making the rest of the height across Chester 4. And that's really to allow for that transition to be able to occur between the types of properties that are expected in any type of future development or existing development. I'm going to walk through each district, and then this map hits a lot of the districts, and so when we go on to the other maps, I will quickly touch on the districts that I've already gone over, but I'm not going to bore you with more slides of the same information. But the process for this form-based code was that the staff and the consultant reviewed background documents, existing plans. We've defined the pilot area. We assessed the existing conditions by doing site visits with walking and bike tours, not only with our staff and other staff members and colleagues, but also some of the community. And then there was visioning through a hands-on workshop with the community. There was a charrette process that occurred over Zoom, and we included the map online, and then we created character maps and regulations. And so this is the interactive map that was online for a long time, and then there was the charrette process where people did the visioning of saying, this is what I would like to see here, this is, oh, I remember this place for this, etc. And then we developed the character act areas, which then led to the zoning changes that we're going to propose today. So I just want to kind of point out, this is the existing zoning of the area. What you see on the far left on East 55th, that is all zoned semi-industry. So the uses that are allowed there currently are everything that is from semi-industry, general retail, which is light manufacturing, used car lots, car repair shops, things of that nature. The brown that you see, the entire area is zoned multifamily. So along Chester, you see multifamily. Along Huff, you see multifamily. And then you see some spots of local retail or general retail, or maybe you see some two-family in the gold color. And the reason why I'm pointing this out is because this dictates the type of development that you attract or the type of uses that you get. A lot of people during the community process, prior to, during the pandemic, and post-pandemic before today, really would like to see some higher quality retail or perhaps a grocery store, things of that nature. And so this is very restricting of that and does not allow for that at this time. I'm going to walk through the housing. There was a lot of interest from the council folks as well as the community about having proper infill housing that had met all income levels. So everything from affordable to market rate. And so this proposal in yellow here is for housing 4, which allows for up to 4 units. And then you have the neighborhood scale, which allows for up to 8 units. And the community scale is multifamily. And this is really interesting because currently we have single family, 2-family, and then multifamily. So that allows 1 unit, 2 unit, or as many units as you can fit on your lot with standards. And so one of the reasons why we bring up this area is this code in the city of Cleveland, most R2 family districts have substandard lots, which are lots that don't meet the lot requirements of our zoning code. And what happens is you see a lot of people needing variance for any type of infill housing for today's standards. And so I've kind of walked through this, but really what it says is that in the 2-family district, residential gross floor areas half the lot size. And so this really affects more of the smaller lot sizes. The minimum lot width is 40 feet for a single family dwelling unit or 50 feet for a 2-family dwelling unit. The lot area is what generally, most lots are less than 4,800 and definitely less than 6,000 square feet. And then the minimum dwelling unit size is 950 square feet across the city of Cleveland. And so why is this important? So when we think about what properties are being used as what, you have certain properties that are being used as single family and some that are used as 2-family, and then you have a mix of other uses within. And this is important also because within that, over 100% of 2-family dwelling units are not meeting lot width requirements or area requirements. And then same with single family, you have a significant portion that is not meeting their standards. And that is really important because any renovation, new development is going to automatically need a variance or an exception from the zoning code to build their home. This is also the same as the minimum lot area as it relates to the non-conformities that our current code causes. And the reason why this is really important is when you look at the property survey that was taken earlier this year by our Building and Housing Department, in our 2-family zones, in this area, you have 138 units or vacant parcels that rank C. So what does C mean on a property survey? That means fair, which is some cracking or brick or wood, major painting required, deteriorated cornice, crumbling concrete, etc. And so that non-conforming clause in our current zoning code prohibits a rebuild by right if more than 50% is destroyed by acts of God or other cause. What happens is a lot of people are unable to obtain traditional mortgages or financing, which results in more real estate investment and cash transfer by non-residents. And we see this not just in your neighborhood, but across all neighborhoods of the city of Cleveland. And then we also field calls for people that are having difficulty insuring their home because they don't meet that conformance laws. So how can the form-based code help with this? It can respect both the existing and desired development patterns. It promotes adaptive reuse and rehabilitation. It reduces those non-conformities. So all of your lots, if this code is passed, become conforming, meaning that all non-standard, substandard lots become conforming lots. So if you want to build on them, you get the zoning code, but you don't have to worry about all those extra area dimensions and things of that nature. It promotes adaptive reuse and rehabilitation. So people that want to fix, people that want to fix.
Is that you? Is that you?
The remake. The remake.
Somebody needs to mute. Hear them.
Anybody, so I'm just gonna turn the volume down on TV. You can vote.
I saw it here.
Volume down.
I'll log out, but it's not.
Can they hear me?
Oh, she's off. Oh, she's good now. Who's Kara? You're right. Who's Kara?
We're good to go. Can they hear? Online. All right. Well, it also promotes adaptive reuse, rehabilitation. It reduces those non-conformities. It supports home-based businesses. There's effective infill standards that are residential streets or commercial corridors. It streamlines the regulatory process by removing barriers for context into investment and avoids costly administrative fees or zoning. And then expands access by permitting accessory dwelling units, cottage courts, cluster development, and multi-generational housing, as well as other variety of housing types. And then it does not regulate the typical lot size, that's what we're about, unless you have driveway access. Or the maximum floor area, and then a lot width within the building size. So this really allows for a variety of housing types that our city has not yet seen in quite some time.
Sorry, Shannon, can we
You're hearing
interrupt?
feedback on this.
There's still feedback apparently, so
That we can't hear, they can hear it on the other side.
they can hear it on the other side, but we turned down our volume, so if we could just pause for 1 second.
Yeah. We'll get some feedback.
You want me to, how much longer do you have?
Not too much, I'll go through these pretty quick.
I can log off. I don't want to because I want to see if people want to speak online, but maybe you want me to try? It's me.
Well, can we ask those online, is there still feedback? Person who we believe had feedback signed off. No longer feedback. Okay.
So I'll go through these districts. So this is the H4 district. This allows for up to 4 units on a site. So that doesn't mean every site needs 4 units. You can still have single family, you can have an accessory dwelling unit, which duplex, triplex, or quadplex, and the maximum height of your building or structure would have to be 2.5 stories. And that's for new construction. The accessory dwelling unit is very important because it allows for people, if you have maybe a college student returning home, or you have an older relative or younger relative that you might not necessarily want them to live within your house. Maybe you want to create a unit over your garage, you could do that. And I know that HUD has recently approved allowing first-time homeowners to have accessory dwelling units on their traditional mortgages. So it can help pay for your mortgage if you would like to do so. So when we say house 4, what could that mean? That could mean a variety of things. So that could mean maybe you're carved out on a ground floor. What we see a lot here is maybe that 3rd unit in the attic space. Obviously, you have to meet building and housing regulations as it relates to fire and safety. You could be attached to a house. You could be stacked above a garage, like a carriage house. It could be a detached unit on your property. Maybe it's a conversion of a garage to a whole unit. Maybe you have a duplex, maybe it's a triplex or a quadplex. Maybe you have 2 duplexes, or maybe you have 4 bungalows, like a cottage court of some sort. So that allows some aging in place within your community. And so the next section is the neighborhood scale. And this is what you see in the gold, which is 2.5 represents the amount of stories permitted. But in this district around the park and things of that nature, we allow for up to 8 units. And this allows for low intensity housing options within walking distance of neighborhood serving retail. And again, that can take on everything from single family, accessory dwelling units, duplexes, triplexes, or small apartments, and a maximum height of 2.5 stories. And so we really look at this as some of the missing middle housing. So it doesn't necessarily have to have 8 units, but it is a possibility. And I bring up the one here on East 89th Street that you see, this is 8 units, but it is very much in context with the historic big homes on that street. This also would apply to the H3 or H4 district, in which we allow up to 3 or 4 units on the property, and what that would look like in context with the existing context around it. The next section is what you see in the light pink. That's called C3 or Community Scale 3. That's essentially multifamily and allows for up to 3 stories. The current zoning here allows for up to almost 5 or 6 stories. So we're bringing the height down there to be more in context with the existing residences that flood the north and south streets. And so what could this look like? It allows for larger style apartments, so more than 8 units, but you have to still fit in within that massing and the setbacks that are required in that setback. You have urban buildings pulled up to the street with activated facades, so windows and entrances, and then you also put the parking to the roof. There's only 3 stories permitted here, 5 stories is not permitted in this district, but because we're talking about other maps, I left it there. We also allow for residential mixed use. So this is your rose color, if you will, where you see CX4 along Chester, and that's commercial flex. So that allows for that, for the multifamily, but also a little bit of retail involved that is amenity to the community at large. And then each of these require that transition. And then as we talk about the site and the lot requirements, this is where this really helps, where you have these very large sites or lots along Chester that have these interesting setbacks. And so it allows for developments to go in that are more in context with the neighboring properties to the north without necessarily having to consolidate all of their lots, having just a 275-foot frontage where they may be able to add more green space or parking or things of that nature and really be more in context. And so it really allows for that flexibility as long as you're screening it properly. And so what does that commercial flex look like? In this case, it's a four stories. It allows for residential and that limited retail on the ground floor. So this could look like a townhouse apartment, maybe it's live work, maybe it's neighborhood retail, maybe you have a yoga studio downstairs in an apartment building, or a Pilates or something of that nature, or maybe a smoothie place or something, or a barber. The next is the Urban Flex 3 or 5 stories. And so you see this here along Huff and then along East 55th Street. And so East 55th Street allows more for those 5 stories. It doesn't mean you have to build 5 stories, but it is permissible. And then along Huff is 3. And then again, this is that residential, commercial, and mixed use. You have urban buildings pulled up to the street with frontages that are activated with the public, or providing some type of amenity space. And then again, we put the parking to the rear. And this is kind of what that could look like if you didn't have retail, but it was just residential on the first floor, how you could activate that. We see this in a variety of contexts throughout the city. This is another example of what that could look like. Again, you could have that small retail on the first floor and residential above. Again, this is that transition strip and how that would play out. So you would, from that urban flex to the C3 district, you would need to have a transition strip so that your building is not overpowering the residents, single family, maybe 2-family residents as well. And then this section is the urban node 3 and 4. In this district, you have one urban node 4 district, and it's at the site of the MLK building, and that site is quite a large site. It needs to be in context with the C3, where the actual school sits, and then the H4, which are those single lots that are fronting the single family homes across the street. The current zoning in this area is a mix of general retail, local retail, multifamily, and general industry. So in this case, we're saying you can have these nodes of intensity for mixed use buildings. So you see it right there at the corner of Up and East 71st. And then what does that urban node 3, what could that look like there? These are just examples to show you what that would look like. The key to this section is that there is no residential permitted on the first floor, and that's purposely done so that you can have a very activated first floor that creates more public safety. And this is just the regulations. And this is the mixed use shot front for urban node 4. That's the same thing. Again, you have these large ground stories. It's very vibrant. It's very welcoming. It creates places and spaces that the community can be comfortable with. And this is just an example of where this plays out across the city. And then this is the Huff map. And so I'm going to move on to the next 2 opportunity corridor maps. And again, I'm not going to inundate you with the same districts because I've already spoke them, but I'll talk about them real quick. So the opportunity corridor has been years in the making, and there's been tons of planning around it. Most notably the East 79th Street corridor study and a variety of other plans. And so we really worked with Burton Bell, Carr, and Fairfax to come up with the community to work with neighborhood planner Kim Scott, who's been around since the beginning, and the other various organizations to develop the map and the characteristics for this. And so the first one is the Job Corps zone. So what you see here is to the right is the existing zoning, which is very much the tools that we have today that most align with this, because as you knew, there's been a lot of interest in opportunity corridor, and we wanted to make sure that the zoning aligned with this project from the beginning. And so the purple that you see is an urban innovation campus, and then along East 79th, north and south corridor, what you see is where there's a call for more pedestrian and walkability and retail shops. So the first part is the urban node 4. You'll see those in that dark green, and that's specifically on the 4 corners of opportunity corridor, as well as south of the tracks around the parks. And that's really intentional so that you don't have residential on the first floor, that you make it so that it really follows the plan, but also puts those eyes on the street. It's vibrant, it's a destination for people in the neighborhood. And then the general urban is the urban flex, so up and down that East 79 corridor, you see spaces for this. So this is where you have residential, but maybe not so heavy commercial retail. It's a lot more amenity friendly for the neighborhood. And then the UIC, which is that vast amount of purple that you see, this is the campus research and development. This is the job creation area. This is where they expect a more suburban campus and an urban feel with low tech, manufacturing, distribution, maybe some light industry because you have several that already exist. There's research and development. There is no residential permitted in this area, and that is purposeful to place the people near the East 79th Street stations and being within accessibility to various options of transit. The form here is contemporary suburban campus with enhanced landscaping along the corridor. We know Opportunity Corridor and how it is formulated. And then we want to make sure that that parking is still to the side of the rear of buildings, the street properly. And then you have to have a transition to any lower densities or lower intensities that border the property on the near sides. So that's the job corps zone. And then the last map is the new economy zone. And again, a lot of these districts have already been mentioned, so I'm just going to weave through them. What you see on the far left is H3 that allows for up to 3 units, so that's the yellow. In between there is the neighborhood 2.5 that allows for up to 8 units. And then right south of where the new Myers is, you have the neighborhood flex. So that's allowing for live work, again, allows for up to 8 units. And then again, you have more of that urban innovation, the urban node, and the urban flex districts, and some green space. So the urban innovation district that you see on the east side of East 105 is again allows for some research and development, biotech, high-tech, pharmaceutical, residential in your upper stories, maybe you have some limited ground story retail. And that's really shown by the buildings being pulled up to the street with activated facades, and then the parking to the rear. And then we're allowing up to 4 stories in the district. And so as we talk about neighborhood flex, that allows for live work opportunities with some standards. So it promotes the equity by allowing diverse economic opportunities within the neighborhood core. And it also serves as a buffer to those more less dense uses. It provides amenities to nearby parks. So maybe a small scale coffee shop or an ice cream shop. It regulates around impact rather than use classification itself. So what is the impact of this use in this area? And then it creates connections amongst those very long, tall blocks that we have in this neighborhood. And it provides those, again, that word up. So that's what this neighborhood flex district really is. So you got some low intensity housing. So rather than just going from single to up to multifamily, we're allowing a little bit of gentle density in there, but also allowing some really neighborhood amenities. And then the urban node 5, again, this is a node of intensity for mixed use, and this is right there at Cedar in East 105. And that really allows for a shopfront building put up the street with activated facades. You have substantial windows, those tall ground stories, and in these districts, it ranges from 3 to 5 stories. And so that's the Opportunity Corridor new economy zone. And then the other districts we've already kind of walked through. And again, these are all based on those neighborhood plans with Fairfax and Burton Middle Car. These are not in these maps today, but I have to include them in this conversation because you're adopting the text, and this is included in the text for expansion. But the other district is the industrial flex districts. And again, that's just being able to take legacy industrial buildings and adaptively reuse them, or you can still use them for some light industrial uses. And so this is just kind of what that looks like, and I can go into further detail if you'd like. As it relates to final and just kind of wrapping up, what does this mean for neighborhood and expedited development and affordable housing? Again, it's hard to build a variety of housing types throughout our city. We often just see that single family, 2 family, and then however many apartments we can get on a lot. And so this allows for, like I said, a variety of housing typologies. It removes those minimum lot sizes, the lot width if you don't have a driveway access, and some of the other restrictive requirements that our current code allows. And then what does this mean for my neighborhood and affordable housing? Again, it promotes a variety of housing typologies from affordable housing, missing middle, to full-on market rate housing. It encourages gentle density, which is something our code doesn't do. It allows for predictability and transparency. The community, the city, the government, everybody knows what is going on and what we expect to be developed based on our plans. And then it's administered in a very transparent way. And then it does not prohibit those smaller and more versatile forms. And then again, it allows for things like the in-law suites, aging in place, and multi-generational housing. And so why should a lot of times the council folks ask, why should my residents want this? And this goes back to our common goals as a commission and a staff, but also with the mayor. And basically we take this community vision and engagement and we take those plans and we turn that into regulation and code so that it's enforceable. It allows citizen participation in decision-making processes. The built form is directly related to public safety. It encourages revitalization with more predictable and streamlined development process. It promotes that affordable housing that we so need in this community. It helps small businesses, especially those with low barrier to entry and mom and pops that are really just trying to get out the door, start their business. And it creates more sustainable, environmentally healthy neighborhoods through proximity and requiring that connectiveness within our community.
I think we should probably rate there, so start to
Yep,
take
so-
some comment, just so we have some time. You good? You got any more?
I'll just close out.
Okay, go ahead.
So thank you for listening. I know it's a lot to take in, but again, I believe that this project really meets all of those goals that the mayor has laid out as well as this commission has laid out.
Thank you. I'm sure there are gonna be a lot of questions for you, Shannon, so hold on. So first, do we have any clarifying questions from the commission before we take comment, or we can ask them after as well? So just quickly before I open up the public portion.
I have a couple, Madam Chair,
Okay.
to staff. I'm not really sure what you're asking me personally. Maybe I'm confused. I see there are several neighborhoods listed in my agenda, and you're saying we're only here for 2 or 3. And so I need, so that's the case. Why were those pulled out? I got a couple more, so keep track. How long has this process been going on? Since 2019, so we're about to hit 2024. So let's just say 5 years. There's been a lot of money spent, correct? There's been a lot of human capital, lots of meetings, lots of, and my concern, that I just left a city in Alabama where they adopted, or wasn't adopted, it was a big zoning effort over years, and it's still sitting on the shelf. I hope that we're not setting a precedent by pulling, no. That is a question.
Okay.
Are we setting a precedent by pulling out all these other neighborhoods and allowing what's been perpetuated for the last 100 years to continue? And that's it. I'm done. Thank you, Madam
Okay.
Chair.
So, well, let's take the clarifying question first about which ones are we voting on today, and that question first. And let's save the other one for the discussion at the end, because we're gonna take public comment first. So I think it's a very important question that we should discuss as a commission. But first, which are in, which are out, and why?
So what you're approving today is the form-based code text, as well as these 3 specific neighborhood maps.
Okay.
As it relates to what was on the agenda, I can't speak to the different neighborhoods that were there, but throughout the course of this project, we were tasked with these neighborhoods and the organizations, as well as the neighborhood planners to get there. As it relates to the 4th map that was in this pilot project, a significant time and money has been spent on, that is something that has been set to the side, but we are hoping we'll move through the process once all parties are more comfortable.
I mean, the goal is that the pilots work, this becomes citywide, right? This is the goal.
That's the goal,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
the goal is to transfer this
citywide.
into other areas, and how that would work is if there's any new neighborhood plans or council persons would like to have a form-based code in their area, we could transfer these districts to that. So that's why it's really critical to adopt the text. because that's what allows for it to transfer through, but this is going in as all as one ordinance. So it's more of a legal issue, more than a planning issue, if you will, with these maps, is that this is a new project, this is a new code, and so the city is saying, here, this is what we would like to do, and we'll adopt all of these. So you can kind of compare it to when the first code was written and the first land use map was
Got
drawn.
it.
They wrote a code and then they picked the
Okay, I get it.
districts.
Okay. Any other clarifying questions? Because I know there are a lot of people here to speak, so let's open it up so that we can hear from those. What I will say is, I'm gonna take those that are here in person, who showed up, versus online. We'll take online second, since you took the time to come. So first, we're gonna open this up to anybody who would like to speak first in favor or has a question that would be in support of this. Then second, we'll hear those who are opposed to it or have questions as well. And so just raise your hand. I'll call on you. Just state your name and name or address or your organization. And as I ask, we'll ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. So we'll go first.
Okay, Fairfax area.
Okay.
You mentioned something about H4 house accessory buildings. So that has to do with like, you can have a carriage house and a garage together.
Can you state, sorry, your name and address or?
John Cummings, 2214 East 100th Street.
Thank you.
Through the chair to the gentleman. Yeah, so when I talk about carriage house, I mean like an apartment above a garage.
So you saying they're permitting this now? See, if I want to build a garage in my backyard now, and I can have a carriage house on top of it.
You would be able to, in terms of use, because of the zoning being 2-family, but in terms of the lot standards and the setbacks, you would have to go through the Board of Zoning Appeals process. You would have to go through a significant amount of meetings through City Hall to be able to build that.
And what about container houses?
Container homes.
Yes, in the Fairfax area.
So container homes are, through the chair to the gentleman, we don't regulate the type of house in terms of, but it has to fit within the context of the neighborhood. So containers is not something that this commission or Landmarks Commission approves, and it wouldn't be able to do necessarily. But container homes in terms of a building form, they're treated the same way through ensuring that the regulations are met through the building code.
Okay, if I want to ask someone more questions, who would I contact? You?
You can contact myself or Ms. Kim Scott, who is the neighborhood planner, who's been with this project since the very beginning.
Yeah, so I think that's a good question, which is if there are additional questions, you want to meet with someone about a particular site or project, is to reach out to either of the two of them, which would be great. So we'll start over here, state your name and address, and also please address the chair, and I'll make sure the comments are answered.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead. Yes.
may I ask for people to stand up so that the microphone may pick up your voice as
Oh,
well?
sorry, just because people are listening online. So-
My name is being praying for 8 months of building. 95% of the homeowners just before the other fires because we couldn't contact them. We had a petition to disapprove it. They had a meeting in the morning, that afternoon, on the same meeting, I watched them approve the building being built. You're saying that you're concerned about offending the neighbors. We're offending because of parking. You can't have a huge building and you say there's no minimum limit. You can't have 54 suites and only a 40 parking zone. Other people are gonna be parked on the street. That's impeding our neighborhood. We have a nice, quiet neighborhood. And you're gonna have many cars. And then you can enter into the setbacks, and then you gotta enter into the streets. That's another problem. I would like to see that the zone does not allow massive units that don't, come to the park. Because that's a problem. You need to be parking. Parking, and especially went to the meetings, And our number one concern with all of the projects going on in Hunt. Parking, no parking from, and sidewalk from, we need to have parking accessible. So no unit to be built if it's not accommodating parking for their units.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. My name is Harry E. Cooper III. I live in 1756 East 65th Street. And I want to thank you for allowing me to express my concern. My concern for parcel numbers 11803 020, 11803 017, 11803 012, 11803 013, and 11803 014. When I first was called back to move into the Huff area, the councilman was Fannie Rose. And she explained to us that she moved back, she wanted residential properties in the area. She promised us that. So we began to put trees up, build our big flower beds, did all sorts of things. Everybody was saying, oh, you live in the Huff area. That's a beautiful area. Huff is big time. All this and that. And we done everything. It was like our last dream. I'm 75 years old. It was my last dream to be living a home, to have a home here now, and live in the Huff area. It was my dream. And so yesterday, me and my buddy here, Reverend Rivers, we drove from 55th to 90th Street, every block. And we found many vacant lots, especially on 79th and 82nd, where a building could be put, other than being put between 65th and 63rd, between Huff and Chester, where this land is residential. When we came back, Ms. Lewis said to me, why don't you start a street club? And we started the street club, me and Reverend Rivers here, we started the street club. And I've been the president of the street club, and I love what I'm doing. And I love my company. And I hate to see someone come in and try to bully their way in and take our property from us. Not from us, but we won't even be able to sell it. We got some properties in our block that's worth over $375,000, $300,000, $350,000. And to top it all, our block is considered residential. We built this up. We get our grass cut every week, just like the people way out. We spend a lot of money. Our block is residential. It's been residential as long as I'm 75. It hasn't been residential for the last 40 to 50 years. The members of the Huffite Street Club, please stand up. I hope that you each one will have something to say. Thank you. But we really want to keep our block between 63rd and 65th, between Huff and Chester. We want to keep it residential. And I pray and I ask for your grace and mercy that you will consider that particular block and not take it from them. This is all we got right now. All of us is late. We late. Clock is ticking. Please stick with us between the 63rd and 65th, between Huff and Chester. We worked hard. Y'all know it because y'all ride through there and you can see. Our block is residential. And I hope the rest of the members of the street club have something to say.
Thank you.
Excuse me. My name is George Rivers, and I am associated with the Street Club as well. I'm an advisor. I also lived in the Huff area for 24 years, and I purposely moved back. It was a choice. I didn't move back because I was designated to move back. I moved back because I had a heart in Huff. And because of that, you know, we want to be a part of everything that goes on in our area. You know, and I agree that there's possible that there's been meetings of other areas, but no one really has came to Huff Heights Street Club or 63rd and 65th, you know, precisely to make us aware of what's going on. Community meetings beyond our street are great, but if it's going to affect us immediately, I feel that it should have come to us. We did not hear anything about this until this past summer. And it's just disheartening that we are affected by this and basically blindsided. And we're just asking for the committee to look at all aspects. Yes, we are for development. We love development as well. We developed. We came back to Huff area when no one else wanted to come. We put our money, our heart, our life into it. And I don't think that that should be ignored. Thank you.
Stephen John Rowe, 7112 Huff, also representing for the McWorld Corporation. I have a home, 7112, 3-story, 6-bedroom, right here. I'm also legal guardian, one of my relatives, because he has a landmark. And like the gentleman here said, you know, we were blindsided because I'm in this group organizational administrator from the state of Ohio for MRD. And I was converting in the process, jumping through hoops, convert my house so I can have a life and have my cousin that's there. He's 70 years old, put some more seniors in there with him, with staff and so forth. Now I noticed, like on the map, I'm in a category of M25, okay, M23, C node. And how would that affect what I was going to do? Because I done took out mortgages, I done bought another home, all in the process of doing it. And like the gentleman said, we were blindsided, maybe because I had tunnel vision, because the state got me jumping through so many hoops. I've been working with them for the last 8 months. Now I'm about this close, you know, with the Adams board and so forth. Now I gotta get the permits. I mean, the occupancy permits. And then I get this letter, just 3-4 days ago with this crap. You know, that really put me in a pickle with all these loans and stuff I've been doing for your product. And now there's 6 vacant lots next to me. I was gonna purchase those lots. I don't know if I'll be allowed to. Just so I can have, I got the lot on the one side of it, but there's no houses on the block where I'm at. So I'm gonna redevelop the block. But I'm a real estate agent and investor also. I know I asked a lot of questions, but my primary concern is when will this take place And how would that affect my plans on what I'm trying to do or what I'm already in the process of?
Through the chair, the gentleman. So what you're referencing is what is considered a residential facility. And that's generally permitted only by right in multifamily districts, and so long as you're not within 1,000 feet of another, or you still need to go through the variance process. This code is not just a standalone code. There's a lot of specific uses throughout the code, such as residential facilities or marijuana facilities or things of that nature that require some extended review through our current code. And so through the residential facility in a neighborhood 2.5, that's gonna allow you to have up to 8 units on a site. So whether that's a parcel or a group of parcels, you could have up to 8 units, which actually is similar in terms of the residential facility. You still couldn't be within 1,000 feet of another, but it would be permitted in that. So it's not, I think it, from what your current zoning is, what did you say was multifamily?
Yeah, I was gonna switch it to commercial.
Well, you can change your land use. You just have to go through the specific process.
Right. I was just wondering with this, would I be allowed to?
We would have to review a building permit, but yes, generally speaking, as long as you're not within 1,000 feet, you'd be able to. You could still seek out a variance, either way. That's across the city regardless, and that's really to reduce saturation of those types of facilities across the city. And the other thing to mention is that every single lot, in terms of lot standards, but also the use, if you're a legally existing use, you're going to be allowed to remain. That's not gonna get taken away from anybody. And that's generally how it goes with any type of rezoning, that whatever you're legally allowed to do currently will continue into perpetuity.
And I also want to make a statement, like what the lady said down there, I'm right around the corner from you. And right around, like in our area, there's nothing but $300,000-$400,000 homes and stuff. Like former chief sits right in back of it. And we have a nice little neighborhood. And I seen proposals to tear that school down and put shopping districts and stuff. You know, I mean, we're like middle class, even though we're not in the suburbs, but our area that we want to remain kind of quiet. We don't have a lot of traffic or any of that stuff. And they started throwing up all these retails, trying to get all that other crap.
Thank you. Anyone else?
It was, Aisha Ivy,
We speak up.
my name is Aisha Ivy, I live at 1782 East 63rd Street, and we will be directly affected by, a business wanting to put a commercial property on our street. Again, like everyone else has said, I grew up in this community, my mom was raised in this community, my grandmother, and these houses have been here for years and the people have been here for years. And it's disheartening to hear, to be bullied, because I feel like, you have to have a process going for a certain amount of time before you bring it to the table. And I feel like, this process has been going on way before they brought it to our attention. Again, like, Mr. Rivers said, we were, blindsided in the summer. We bought our home a couple years ago, and I would have never purchased my home next to a commercial building. I have grandchildren that live with me, and so our street is very quiet. Our street doesn't have a lot of traffic on it, and to directly affect the people of the community, without, thinking about their concerns and how quiet it is just to gentrify a neighborhood that no one ever wanted to live in previously, but then you throw up all of this other things and it doesn't have anything to do with us. You know, we would not be allowed to go to these places where Myers is built and be able to afford the stuff in there, because you guys are putting up more and more of construction, all of these story of penthouses and condos are all in our community. We don't want that on our street. We don't want it on 65th, 63rd. We want it quiet the way it is. We don't want no parking lots or anything like that. Again, it will affect my grandchildren that's on our street and any other of our, of my neighbors' grandchildren on that street as well. You have to think about the people in the community when you think about buildings, commercial buildings and anything else. You have to think about that because we was there before you all.
Okay, Erwin Williams, I live at 1790 63rd Street, been there for 27 years. I love the neighborhood, I like to see improvements, but I don't want to see, you know, certain things that's gonna affect us in a negative way. Okay, Dave's across the street from me. During the summer, spring, fall, whatever, I'm picking up paper out of my yard, bags, out of my yard, commercial building. You know, this is what I have to deal with. I'm between two lots. You know, picking up paper. I was cutting the grass there for, let me say, 26, 27 years. Half of the lot close to Chester, half of the lot next to me. I did it for years until some new people bought the property over there. Then they did half, I did half. But what did they do with the property? They sold it right from under both of us. You know, we was never even asked. You know, we just want respect. You know, we've been paying property taxes for years. Yeah, we got a deal in the beginning, some of us, you know, who came here in the beginning. I appreciate all of that. But I want quietness, you know. Dave's now had shooting a couple of weeks ago over there. We just don't want this all around us, you know. Dave's is fine, you know. You got to deal with the shooting, but I'm across from the school. I deal with paper from over there. You would think they would pick up their own paper. To me, that I don't know if that's commercial or not, but I think it is. You know, but I'm picking up paper. You know, like I feel like I should have a job getting paid. You know, so I kind of don't. I'm not looking forward to more of that.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, since the block between 63rd and 63rd Chester and Hull is residential, I don't know if I said it before or not, but I don't know why we cannot have market value houses in there. That's what we would like to see. We'd like to see market value houses, townhouses. The block is residential. It's been residential here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody online? Oh, okay, go ahead, Khalid, then we'll go online. Oh, sorry, two more, and then we'll go online. There's a few people who have their hands raised online. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm Dennis Ivy. I'm Aisha's husband. We live at 1782 South Street. I don't think we're not against this form-based code or anything like that. We're just against them putting this building at the end of our street, which would actually run right into our driveway. Their parking lot is gonna be right next to our driveway. The building is gonna be 3 or 4 stories and it's gonna be looking down on our property as well as her property. We're just against that. We're against somebody coming in and putting commercial property at the end of our street when it should be residential, or it should be green. It's nice now because we can walk out of our house and look right over and see Dave's and see her house. We all associate with each other all the time. Our street is very close knit, and I'll give you an example. On Thanksgiving Day, a couple pulled up out of their car and walked in our front door with a cake. And you know what I said? Come eat with us. They're like, this is not the Rivers house. Not Rivers house, it's 3 doors down. But if y'all want to stay and eat, you can stay. So our little area is very close knit. And like, we're the new people. We just moved here a couple years ago. We bought our house, and the amount of money that they talking about is the amount of money we spent. And for us now, and we believe me, I had to fight with her to get her to move to Huff. I wanted to move immediately because I'm fine wherever I'm at. She wanted to go to suburbs. She wanted to go to West Side. She wanted to go somewhere everywhere until we saw this house. Because of the grass, the greenery, the neighbors, and it turned to find out that I knew the neighbors. I've been doing Mr. Cook 25, 30 years almost. So it turned out to be a wonderful thing. But so I'm just here to say that we're not against the form-based code, not against changing any of that, we just trying to keep this commercial building, and everybody tells us, oh, it's gonna increase your property value. For me to walk out of my house and see a 3-4 story building where it used to be all grass, the dogs run, the kids play, that's gonna be very hurtful, and then I just know I'm not gonna get the money back that we spent for this house, if we have to leave, which is not our plan, we plan to stay like they did for the next 40 years. So, that's all I have.
Can I ask the chair?
So we have couple more
We-
to ask,
we have
but
to-
we can still have comments,
We
then
have
we can ask
comments.
questions, so, Khalid, if you can, go ahead, are you sure? Okay, we got a couple people online too.
Okay, Khalid Hawthorne, Migos Foundation. So I've been here, with Migos since June 22, when I was with Fremont West Development Corporation for 3 years. And have been involved deeply with the development process with communities, the old code, which is put it like this, pain in the butt. And has been for developers, for a community, for CDCs. Having this form-based code, I think brings more predictability to the process. It also, the input that we give, a lot of it's already built in already. So right now, what you're seeing is, a lot of the projects that we've been seeing, we're in between this old code and a new code. And developers with big projects trying to, fit those within that. I think with the new code and people having those expectations up front, they'll be able to design to those expectations. And so hopefully that will lead to less commentary as far as projects. We get to more how the form of the buildings, how a building presents itself to the community, the street, how does it connect to the neighbors, things of that nature. I know the history of Hub. It's a dynamic neighborhood. It's mischaracterized in the media and all kind of places. And that's not what I see or what I experience or what I see going forward, but it's, we're building 40 homes. We had to get variances for some of those homes. That process, that becomes a tedious process in itself. But one thing that I consistently hear from people, there are 700 vacant lots in this community, over 700. That's not a healthy community. That's based on many things that happened throughout history, and with negative connotations. But going forward, how do we use those as assets? Going forward, how do we rebuild a commercial district around Huff Avenue and places? Those are things that this attempts to answer. What we currently have is we have people who are wanting community amenities. They want to walk to barbershops, retail stores, things of that in the neighborhood. They also want to clean. We need to work on that piece. And there's been discussions with Midtown trying to expand their special approved districts. They have people clean up, so you don't have to do that. Hopefully. Yeah, so people are wanting all these communities. This will help allow that. They also help different types of buildings be built. And what I see is generate that community wealth. So in Tremont, with Professor, that is something that I've heard. We want Professor in Hub. And I'm like, well, Professor is mixed use, it's residential, it's churches, it's rectories, there's neighborhood family health centers, it's all of that. And all of that has created this wealth within Tremont. Now granted, I want to bring along everybody in Huff along with that so that people aren't displaced. That's a part of gentrification that I don't want to see. But definitely in support of what we have here as far as this one goes.
My name is Lucius Williams. I live in Club 6005. And I'm just gonna piggyback off everybody who said I'm in the same situation, but I was called to a meeting, emergency meeting, sometime during this year Mr. Cook's house. They had a guy there, when he born next day. But it was some type of real estate guy. He said, he wanted to put low income housing across the street from there, that's a vacant lot. And he's talking about, coming in and putting low income houses there. And we both, spoke there, we all talked about that's what we did. But this guy wasn't going to Cleveland, I don't know where he came from. But, he's talking about that's what they're gonna do with our vacant lots. I said, no, rumors everywhere. But when we heard that time raised up, the hell on our heads.
Yeah, sure. I'm Jeff Reese, at 10617 Frank Avenue. We're in the Fairfax, neighborhood. So I think Mr. Hawthorne said it really well. You know, we're not dealing with a similar issue to the folks in the Huff neighborhood are since 65th, 63rd. But we've had a business there since 1907. And, you know, once upon a time, the folks that lived in the area worked for the business. And, that's changed quite a bit. There's a lot of vacancies in our neighborhood as well, which make it difficult for us to. We still employ a lot of the people in the neighborhood, but you know, that's becoming less and less because of everything that's changing in the neighborhood, all the vacant lots, the residential that's coming down, and it makes it very hard for us to attract talent. And you know, people come for job interviews. They drive right by because there's nothing around in the neighborhood except for us. And so, you know, I'm in favor of this because what it hopefully will allow is for potentially these vacancies to be filled with whatever use these areas are zoned for. And, you know, can help us continue to do business in the neighborhood and not potentially leave for different opportunities out and then inherently the city of Cleveland loses, you know, we employ 75 people right now. You know, we could potentially have those job losses and it continue to perpetuate the issues that we see in the Fairfax neighborhood. And then in the surrounding neighborhoods as well. So
What's the name of the company?
Reese Pharmaceutical.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Anyone else before I open online? So we obviously mixed up if you're in favor or in favor. So anybody who wants to speak to this matter online, just raise your hand and I will call on you. I think I see one is Deborah, first one. Then go ahead. Is there?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good morning. And I first want to thank everyone in the Huff area for expressing some and highlighting some of the issues of communication that have not been happening for our residents in regards to development. We, as a owner at 1878 East 75th Street and the secretary of the BC Block Club, we have seen the attempts of development that, although the neighborhood has been quote unquote included, the reality is that our voices have no effect. It's only the developer's plan that has precedent. So we're concerned about that. And again, the neighbors have been quite eloquent in what that results in for us. Secondly, I'd like to point out that as residents, our ability to acquire some of those vacant lands has been thwarted because until recently, the land bank itself did not have leadership to allow for processing. So those residents who would have wanted to increase their responsibility in the neighborhood for vacant property did not have that opportunity. And I could go on, but I won't go on because I want other people to have an opportunity. Today, I'm specifically pointing as a point of clarification. The documentation associated with the Huff development narrative has an error. In fact, it shows that this the CX4 narrative is erroneous, and it leads one to think that that narrative would be a CX5. So having said that, and certainly you can, at least that's the copy that I have available from online. I would ask that no vote can be taken on this until all the documentation is clear.
Okay, thank you. I will ask about that. I will ask if there is an error.
And then finally, I have a question. And where is it appropriate in zoning that if a large or private developer coming in to develop along a corridor called Chester, which in the past had been more like a Clifton Boulevard rather than a Detroit Boulevard, where in the zoning is it proper for us to ask, maybe not ask, maybe mandate, maybe require that they actually provide uplifting services to the rest of the community? If they're coming in with fiber, then fiber should be extended to everyone. Those are the kinds of issues that can really advance the existing neighborhood as we look to what the future must be. So I thank you for your time today.
Thank you. I'm going to have Shannon address the technical, if there's a problem or a discrepancy. And then anybody else who'd raise your hand. And then I'm going to need to close the public portion because we have really need to start the discussion. And go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll address the Huff map. So the map that she has is probably the first map that came out of this area. And we've had conversations repeatedly with the community across the neighborhood, the councilwoman, Ms. Scott here, and then as well with this commission and the other steering committee members, is that because of the single-family, two-family residential nature and the history of the properties here, that the original 4 and 5 along Chester was not appropriate. And that really was to address some of those concerns for those larger parcels that were more dense in terms of the multifamilies that were being built. And so what we did was scale it down to 3, all the way to where you go through the light pink down to the darker pink. The dark pink is 4. And that was really the purpose of doing that. And that's the map that is to be adopted, if it is adopted here and gets approved or through council. And that was really out of reaction to the community. As it relates to the community projects or community benefit, on one hand, this zoning code requires more community benefit in that it requires more amenity space, more landscaping and screening between uses, that transition strip. But then in addition to that, any type of projects that may be financed through the city will have to go through a community benefits agreement. And so there's a variety of policies that work together. This really just lays the foundation for the land use. So thank you.
Thank you. There's another, Joyce told me that there's someone else online. Who is it?
Their name title R. Calhoun.
R. Calhoun. Is there anyone else online who'd like to speak? I also see, is it Liz or anyone?
I just had a point of order. My question was about the descriptor of the map, not the map itself. The descriptor would lead one to think that it was a CX5, not a CX4. That's my point of order.
The light pink is for 3 stories max, and the rose is for 4.
Okay.
If there's a label issue, we'll correct it.
Okay. So who was the other person?
It's Ron Calhoun at 1885 East 73rd Street.
Hi, Ron.
Hi, how's it going? Thank you, Madam Chair. Three things are pretty obvious here to me, and I just want to point them out. The first thing is the communications. Depending on the council person's meeting, who have meetings when they feel like it, they don't even put their meetings on their calendars. So depending on that kind of a communication to get to the community, I think that's a failure in itself. So I think that the commission should directly communicate with community and somehow, so that people won't, because what this does is when you have a breakdown in communication, it builds a mistrust because they don't know what's going on. So that's one piece of it that needs to be fixed. The second piece that needs to be fixed is the design and review committees. They're mostly professionals, and they're mostly developers or professionals within the developer community.
Excuse me, Mr. Calhoun.
Yes. Well, you said design professionals? Sorry, just a little bit louder.
Enunciate.
Yeah. Can you
I'm
repeat
sorry.
that?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, we
that-
didn't
is this-
catch that point.
Okay, the second point is the design review committees. They're a team of professionals. And the thing with that is that community is built from community up. And this seems to be a project that is developer down. So it's kind of awkward, is the best word that I can come up with. The third piece that I would say is that if you could put community members on those design and review committees, that would help to build a better communication. It all seems to boil down to communication. I don't think development is bad. In fact, I want more development. I want our community to grow. But I think that the input should come from the community. And that's my comment. Thank you, madam.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna close the public portion of the meeting and ask that, sorry. Oh, yes, and well, you don't count as public portion. You're staff. But actually, it will be helpful actually to have maybe the staff, both Kim and you guys just kind of summarize for us. And then we will have a discussion. So you're a perfect bookend to this.
Madam Chair, commission members, and residents who have come out, amigos, we appreciate your presence, your comments. I do want to iterate that, as you know, this process has been long and an arduous task. And Shannon has done a yeoman's work of picking up the pieces. We've had lots of changes through this process. In terms of communication and engagement, I just want to point this out real briefly. In the planning world, or in my world of planning, the things that we do include planning, engagement, advocacy, and regulation. So today we're here to look at a regulatory piece that we're trying to apply to 3 pilot areas. And the way that those areas were selected, the Detroit Shoreway area was an area that was relatively intact. The Huff neighborhood was a neighborhood that was transitioning, and the Opportunity Corridor geographies were kind of, when we started, kind of at ground zero. So those are the pilot areas. In terms of communication, you know, things have changed over the course of this process, just simply because all the things that were pointed out earlier, the pandemic, staff changes, but we continue forward. Mr. Cook, you and I had a conversation earlier this summer about meetings that were coming up. We've had consultants on board in the past to communicate, to engage with the community. Everyone does not always receive the same message at the same time, or does not interpret information that they're hearing. And that's no fault of any individuals. That's just the way that it is. You know, the game of telephone, you start on one end, you have a long line of people. Somebody says the message that is delivered turns out really, really differently. And so I just want to say today that this process, in my mind, is going to improve, yield an improved outcome for residents, as well as the processes that people have to go through to get building permits. And in terms of engagement and advocacy, I am a person who does listen to residents, and I do advocate. But this today is a regulatory piece, and I hope that we can move forward with this, because it's been a long road. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, actually, the public portion is closed. Commission members, any questions, comments, discussion, anything?
Mine is more philosophical, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Age before
Yes.
youth
Yes.
or beauty. I just want to share with everyone here, I am a resident of Fairfax. I live on the other side of Chester, so I hear you. I was there with Miss Lewis when we started planning in the early 90s. So I've been around for a bit, little patina. I just wanted to just ask everyone in this room a couple questions, because really, as we embark on what I believe to be an historic occasion, you know, I asked myself like 5 questions when we started out on this process. The first question, quite frankly, was how old is this code? Over 100 years old. Who wrote the code? None of us. And I'm talking about whether we're women, black, brown, or yellow. So in that context, you know, it was never written for us in this room to that point. The other question I asked myself, what was our status as Americans, people who live in this community 100 years ago? We could barely vote. And lastly, and more importantly, I look at the vestiges of what has happened since that code was written, and you look at all the spot zoning that's been going on, all the amendments and all the redlining and mapping, and we're trying to take the extra sketches, as it were, and shake it and start from anew and do something more inclusive, something that will enhance our communities, protect and include everyone. Thank you.
I have a comment as well, Madam Chair. I was thinking, is it possible that we could revisit the maps and maybe change some of those areas along Chester Avenue to be residential? Is that possible? Because I'm hearing the residents talk about the commercial and the large apartment buildings coming up on their street. Is it possible that those areas can't be changed? To be, there's nothing, the code is great, but the areas on the map that they're talking about, could it be changed?
Yeah, so the areas along Chester are generally residential. They're multifamily residential. And then only when it gets to the darker pink does it become commercial flex. I think that the residents that are here today are specifically talking about the Chester properties next to Magnet between East 63rd and East 65th. And that's something that's been considered. The original zoning there was for as well as Community 3. And then it was changed to Urban Flex after the series of community meetings at the Fatima Center the last 2 months.
So I'm asking, can it be changed? That was my question.
Right, so there's a lot of people that have to just have those conversations. I'll defer to, it can be changed, and any future uses that come there would be a variance from the board's.
So to the commission that's before you today as the point of deliberation. Because we feel that we've done the work and that this is the map that we are presenting to you and that we believe.
So,
go ahead.
So I have a number of questions. The first one, kind of thinking about the maps and the zoning that's set forth. In the kind of CX3 or the C3, are there provisions in regards to the setbacks? I know we talked about that transition zone that's directly on the street that's adjacent to residential, but it seems like, are there provisions in that same right for the back of that building to, again, have some breathing space to residential fabrics within the zoning?
Yeah, so that's what the transition district in the form-based code is that any commercial building on the corner of 63rd and 65th it has a variable setback, so it's, I think, between 5 and 10 feet on Chester, and utilizing Chester as a primary boundary. The transition to the back from the building line has to be at least 10 feet off the property line at ground story, and anything that's over 2 stories would have to be set back an additional 10 feet. Now, if there's 50 feet between the rear property line and the building, then they've already hit that transition strip. They need to, they'll have to put in the proper landscaping and buffering with trees and shrubbery and things of that nature.
Okay, I think that answers my question in regards to some of the concerns about commercial entities being directly adjacent to residential properties. I think
we said that because we saw the design of the drawing.
That's another question.
Wait, you cannot, we address the chair.
Okay,
first.
Again, in regards to future development, my second question is the specific project that's brought up. Does staff know if that has been brought to the commission before? I don't remember seeing it, but
No, we have not seen,
We have
we've
not seen
not
that
seen the project, no.
So the next thing that I would say to community members is that as part of, I'd like to believe, the execution of that project, it would have to be presented to.
I believe it'll come.
It'll come to
Design
commission,
review.
so.
It has not.
It
been
has
here.
not, so I didn't, again, I said it's not, so. Design review doesn't get to make decisions on the approval of projects. They advise the
They're
planning
advisory.
commission. Exactly, so that project will still come to us. So I think your concerns have been heard here, directly to us as opposed to going through design review and then directly to this body. I would say still be a part of those conversations and to the planner making those concerns heard. But I just want to say that I believe that project's not set in stone. They're not getting, built right away. Please.
Chairman, can I ask a clarifying?
Wait, the public portion is complete. The public portion is complete. We're really now asking questions.
I didn't say no, I said it's for the commission to decide.
She said it's for the commission to decide.
I'm not the decider, they're the deciders.
Okay, but please address the chair. We
Yes.
need to have order. Go ahead.
My last comment.
Please
is,
continue.
In many ways, I'd like to believe that the goal of this is to advance the neighborhood in a bunch of different ways. I think, we have this term in planning called NIMBYism, which means not in my backyard. And I think in many ways, some of the comments with regards to we want our neighborhood to stay the same. And I get that. I understand that, people have invested in their neighborhood and they want to retain some of that fabric. But I think additionally, some of the comments that say that hey, we don't want affordable housing directly across from us starts to create a very different type of thing, right? Where we're talking about, hey, we don't want people of a different socioeconomic class to be in the same neighborhood as us. So I think we have to be very careful about what we're trying to achieve in regards to equity within neighborhoods. I'm not saying that, we want people to bulldoze in your neighborhood and put things that you don't want there, but I think it's a nuanced conversation, right? We should make room for people who maybe don't have the same level of access or funds to be able to live and have the same amenities that you all have attained over the last couple of years. And I think that's what the form-based code is trying to do.
Questions, so kind of building off your point about Chester. And Chester's obviously a very busy street, but knowing that part of this is walkability and transit and stuff. Well, it's the bus is on Huff, bus isn't on Chester. So I'm kind of wondering, and just to make sure I understand, C3 is 3 stories, C4 4 is 4 stories. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess one, I'm interested in the why we're looking for vertical density along Chester when maybe the more walkable street is up. And 1, and 2, how did we determine, to use Mr. Ivy's as an example, next to if there's 2 land bank properties between what I believe is his house and Chester, that's 80 feet. So factoring in setbacks, transition back down to the property, is UX3 attainable in that geography? How was the size of each, the CX4 at Crawford and 82nd? It just seems really difficult to comprehend how you would build a 4-story anything in such a small area. So I'm wondering how the spatial dynamic of each little spot factored into densities along Chester.
Yes, I can, through the chair to the councilman. So Chester has been a very long conversation. And it wasn't until we embarked on this project that I even knew about the lack of addresses there because of the history of the street. And you're right, it's like a boulevard right now, right? And so I think there's been, calls from the community and plans with the city in both administrations to look at some point down the road, because we're planners, right? To calm Chester in some kind of way, as there is more development. Chester has historically not been, like you said, the bus line is on Huff. The goal here is to really fill in those infill lots. And at some point, string down Chester, if that's, the way that the city wants to go and look at it as a streetscape improvement project or one of the transportation projects with some of our new transportation planners. It also poses an issue because it has a median down the center, right? And so when we talk about fire services and things like that, there's certain ways that they have to turn and things like that. As it relates to the parcels that you're talking about, that's where the flexibility of this code comes from when you get into the rules of interpretation and the site standards and things of that nature. So for instance, here at East 65th and 63rd, I think you have several land bank properties. It's a privately owned property. I'm not exactly the ownership, but essentially what that is saying is that you have several parcels. So whoever the owner is could go in and consolidate those parcels in a way that fits the project of the code. And that's really important to get on some of the more north-south streets that we talked about previously, about along Huff Corridor, along East 66 and along Chester, as those are, and in those plans and the visions and the things that people want in the community, is really to allow those to be more of your commercial corridors. Along there, again, the regulations are based on site and not based on lot. So you could take 6 lots and turn them into 3 lots, bring your building as close as possible to one of those lots, and then allow green space and parking on the others, so long as it's properly screened for your neighbors and to the north or from the the pedestrian right of way. So with that being said, it is doable under this code to allow that transition. And so it allows more flexibility and creativity to make sure that developers and property owners are respecting what's in context to the north, south, east, or west. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it's, thank you. It's just like, so, then I apologize for belaboring the point, but like between 66th and 70th, like that area was named C3. And it seems like it's because it's hard to envision doing something grander on like such a narrow, like the distance between Chester and Lucerne is so small. I guess I just on the Chester side, I just might be philosophically struggling with like the neighborhoods called Huff. Why such dense residential development along Chester when the historic node of neighborhood, the place that I'd rather be walking down a quieter street is Huff rather than Chester, which isn't boulevard where people speed. I wonder if it's accurate. And then part of the rub is that there is like a philosophical question of like, due to the person who said like, does Chester need to be Detroit or could it be Clifton? Like Clifton's a very nice street. Like there's a market for like a nice, you can still have residential on a busy street and have it be kind of a grand thing, and there's historic precedent for that too. So that's where I don't know if I'm offering a specific solution or if I'm thinking out loud.
Yeah, but we also heard from residents, they don't want huge density on Huff, right? So
yeah,
I think it's, the one part of Chester that is, because of the scale of the street and how vast it is, as opposed to, let's say, Huff Avenue, where you may not want those large buildings, right? So from a community perspective, I think we heard that too.
Sure.
So I don't think it's straightforward in terms of, well, I know what you're saying from a walkable, but from a scale of the street and appropriateness of what the community wants, it's not as straightforward, but I hear your question. Commission members, any other? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make one other comment. And again, we're all processing. This is a lot of information. I'm surprised I remember some of it. I'm going to take my resident hat off, my planning commission hat off. I want to put my architect hat on. I've done that for some time in my life. And I know even when you design something, even when you design a building, even when you design a process, we have to allow that to happen. We have to allow that process to happen. And as it relates to zoning code, it might not be perfect, right? But we could sit here and we could wordsmith, we could tweak, we can move, we can adjust. Until it gets into a place where we can actually practice it, we don't really know what the end result is. And the good thing about maps, it can be amended. So, you know, that's all we have to consider. I mean, I wish we could know. I do know, and one other thing, there was a big charrette that happened, and we had several residents, stakeholders, designers all get to come and convene and try and test some of the code and design buildings and figure out how parking would look and I thought it was really successful personally. So knowing that and having heard what everyone's saying, I think we're in a good place personally. Because I think at one point we have to stop planning and actually start doing. And it's been 5 years, so that's.
Procedural question. We vote, this is advisory goes to council, correct?
That's
the next step in the process is that this goes to city council.
That's correct. It goes for introduction and then committee hearings.
Okay. And it will go through multiple committee hearings?
Yes.
Okay.
It'll go through development planning and sustainability at least, and probably it's up to council.
Okay.
Can I ask one more procedural question? Just for my own goldfish brain, remind us how this all intersects then with design, because I mean, are the districts being proposed all within a design review district? I believe they are, and trying to just say if this passes, there's still not just a unilateral right to do as you feel. Like we still have to come forward and see site plans and kind of check that there's still public process on site plans, transition zones, all those things, right?
Yeah, so let me go back to the slide real quick. Because it really kind of laid it out. What this code does is codify design review. Right now, design review is guidelines. That means you can do what the design review committee suggests. There's an option to not and appeal it for you and the council, right? And so what this code really set out to do was to codify those recommendations, right? And so the biggest change here is that for anything that's 6 to 20 units, it'll still go through a permitting process. They'll go through a pre-application conference, but then it'll also go to administrative review committee, which is that internal committee that is held in multiple other jurisdictions as a technical review committee. And it will go through, basically, if you meet the zoning code, then you are free to move through the process. Now, the zoning administrator or the planning director can recommend a project to go through the extra design review steps, so long as they read the zoning code entirely, or if they need a variance, they go through design review for some extended review, if you will, if you're struggling with materials or things like that. But generally speaking, this code nails down everything that the design review committees have been asking for the last 20 seconds.
So if a project is proposed, I guess, like we have conceptual, schematic, final approval, and really conceptual is really as much the site plan as anything else. I'm trying to think of an example of we get a site plan and we're like, hey, have you thought about moving the exit this way so you're not shining light from that window adjacent property? Like, I think that while our process is very cumbersome, undoubtedly cumbersome, it creates a lot of opportunities for those conversations. And I think part of the anxiety is are those conversations still allowed to happen, and that nuance can kind of be teased out in this process, knowing that there are different, if there's flexibility on a site, are we able to kind of push for to force the flexibility?
Yeah, I mean, for the 6 to 20 unit range, or that's at 5,000 to 20,000 square feet, those things like lights, plantings, all of that is prescripted in the code. In terms of design review, one of the top purposes of this project or goals of this project was to streamline that process, to codify for all the rules and regulations that this commission was seeing. You may remember from years past when you guys were seeing several projects that maybe wasn't necessarily, you didn't want to see that many, as regards, or it was something that could be administratively signed off on. So this effectively takes design review out of this category here, unless city planning, the director, zoning administrator really feels as though this is a project that could really use that extra design review for the planning commission. Everything a level 3 or above will automatically go through the regular design review, planning commission process. And just to clarify the process of like the public statements as it relates to communities being able to interact in the design review process, it really varies across the city about the opportunity for that.
Great, I apologize. We're gonna need to come to a conclusion. We have still 4 more items on the agenda after this. So we have 15 minutes. So I need commission members to let me know how you'd like to proceed.
Madam Chair, my confusion, as I stated when we initially started this discussion, I'm not exactly sure what we're proving. As I said, I'm looking at my agenda. You have Detroit Shoreway, Vale, Huff, Fairfax, Central, Kinsman, Buckeye, Woodhill, all. And then I have maps that says zoning map Huff, zoning map Job Corps, zoning map New Economy and Innovation Square. And there's a zoning map Detroit Shoreway, Cadell. So.
Yeah, through the chair, it is only the 3 maps before you, which is on the screen, and the text, and we intend to bring the Detroit Shoreway one to a soon time, which then can be added.
So Madam Chair, we're voting on these maps.
We're voting on
Just
this right here, what we're voting. This is all is one.
Unless you want to add an amendment.
So it's this is the text, the sort of, if you will, the motion and the 3 neighborhoods that are before us. What's on the screen? Does that help?
I suppose.
Madam Chair, I'm voting to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the ordinance to simplify the codified ordinances of the Cleveland, Ohio by enacting a new title, BIAA, Cleveland Neighborhood Form-Based Code, chapters 3001 through 3007, and to amend section 327.01. These are for the 3 neighborhoods specifically here, which is Fairfax, and Opportunity Corridor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
Abstain.
Ray Scott,
No.
Sergeant,
Yes.
Slut,
Abstain.
Yes.
Essentially no action.
Yep, so no action has been taken. So, so that motion, did not carry, basically. It doesn't mobilize, but it's not also a motion. So either we'll need a new motion to postpone, or some action, basically, one way or the other. So, my recommendation would be that we take a little bit of time and that we actually, I can't make a motion to postpone or to take, yeah.
Madam Chair, I think Shannon may have this.
Yes.
Can I request the motion be to change E63 to E60 back to the community 3, which is multifamily, and then to adopt this project in the maps?
I think we should that out.
Do you, like, so you're saying like that that portion we could amend I call it the rating, if you will. So
The districts.
So say it again. I can't make a motion, so we'll see what the commission say what you would say. Say what you
Yeah,
say.
so the motion, so this hasn't gone to council yet, so.
Right. Wait, no,
We
stop.
have a solution.
No, wait.
No, I was gonna make a motion,
Okay.
regardless of what she's gonna say.
Okay.
It's not gonna change my opinion.
Okay, but let her say it, and then you can make whatever motion you want. Go ahead.
Yeah, so my suggestion, because of all the years and community meetings that
Yeah.
have been imploded into this, is that, if the gentleman had stated that he's not against form-based code, that they're really just concerned with that, block between East 63rd and East 65th. And my question is, would you all consider approving this with the amendment that I changed that East 63rd to East 65th to back to the community 3, which is multifamily 3-story. It would still require those transition strips. And then whatever proposed use is coming would, if they needed to, seek a variance.
So whatever motion.
And it would go
you
through
go
that
ahead.
public process.
I would like to say just before August makes the motion that if we do carry that through, it sets an interesting precedent that again, we will basically add these kind of amendments almost ad hoc, like at the time of carrying this. I just want to, like, that's what it would set in place.
No, it wouldn't set that precedent. This has not gone to council. This is the first time this is done. This is what gets done here today is what goes to council.
Well, but still,
Right.
I mean, even though it's advisory, it's
That's
still.
the point of the process. That's why we exist, right? So we do, it happens all the time for things that we do.
Can
Go
I
ahead.
clarify that the original mapping, and that's what Ms. Lewis was stating, was it was at Community 3, but then we had the various meetings where we had discussed changing it to Urban Forest 3
Right.
today.
So go ahead.
I'm gonna move to postpone this to our next meeting so that we can have a little more clarity on this commission and from the staff. Thank you.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Can you call the roll?
Luker,
Yes.
Curry,
Abstain.
Craig Scott,
Yes.
Sergeant,
Yes.
Slight.
Yes.
Motion carries. So what that means is there was no action taken. It was postponed. I really thank you all for showing up. I know on a Friday, weekday, to take the time. So thank you. But we need to get on to the next agenda. Shannon, I still want to thank you for everything that you do. Really, so, you did a great job and it's not over yet. We'll fine. Well, but, okay. All right, next item, just because we do need to move forward, if I could have order, please. We have a proposed demolition, or not demolition, we're in the Northeast Design Review District, 2023-023. This is at East 118th Street, 155 East 118th Street. Kevin and anyone speaking to this, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, as you shall answer to the penalty of perjury? Do we have Kevin Oliver? If not, I'm gonna move on so that we can get through this. We have, we'll come back to that one. I don't think I have to do anything. East 2023-039, this is Neon Health Services digital sign, final approval, 13301 Miles Avenue. We have Laura here to speak to this. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, as you shall answer to the penalty of perjury?
Madam Chair, Laura was present previously and I do not see her in the meeting any longer.
All right, we got two of them. We'll keep going and see who comes back.
We lost everybody?
All right, so let's go to Wood Hill because I know it's a little longer,
I have
so
to.
you go ahead. So this is Euclid Corridor 2023-024, Wood Hill Station East Phase 3, conceptual approval 9615 Buckeye Road. Alex Pesta, I did see on there. You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, as you shall answer to the penalty of perjury?
Yes, ma'am.
And you're gonna have to give us the Cliff Notes version.
I'm happy to give you the Cliff Notes version. Thank you, Madam Chair. If you want to just go ahead and start to flip through the presentation, I can call a 20-second timeout when it's time to pause. I know that this commission is familiar with Wood Hill. The good news that I have to share is that the first few phases of housing are currently under construction. Wood Hill is moving forward. And what is before you is we're asking for conceptual, actually schematic approval, if the commission would do so, of Wood Hill Station east, which is when we kind of flip through, is next to the current project that is under construction. We anticipate residents moving into that first phase at the beginning of the year. So it's time to consider getting this next phase moving forward. You know that this is part of a greater Woodhill initiative that expands beyond the specific former Woodhill Estates property, Woodhill Station East, which is what we're here to talk about today. If we can kind of go to the next slide, in that bottom right image, you can kind of see it noted. If we go to the next few slides, it shows it how it relates to the current housing that's under construction. Can we go to the next one, please? This is phase one. This is what is currently under construction. If you flip to the next two slides, a lot of the ground floor amenities that comes into play. And then the next slide is the building that it kind of sits right now. And if we can kind of keep moving forward, I want to kind of just give an overview. These are some of the other housing phases that are currently under construction. This is on Woodland. The next image shows that. And then the next series of images show what is proposed. It is still very much in the works, but is what proposed for kind of what I think most people think of when they think of Woodhill Estate proper. If we can keep going, please, to the site plan, to the next image, next series of images. Next one, please. This is what we're here to talk about specifically today. So the building that is on page right, the zigzag building is the one that is under construction. The building on the right is Woodhill Station East. And then kind of the subsequent slides that are part of this presentation show landscape concepts, site amenities, the light fixtures that are proposed for the site. We are matching so that we are creating a campus kind of aesthetic with what is already under construction. The building floor plans as they sit today. So one of the challenges on this site is the site topography. I'm happy to report that if we go back to, you guys are moving fast, I love it. But if we go back to the ground floor, I'm trying to keep up, which is usually the other way around. Yes. So go back one, please, sorry. The lower level floor, if we could go back just one more, I'm sorry. If we go, there we go, thank you. The lower level, so the site essentially is think of it as two levels. So lower level would be off of the lower level, so that's where there is parking. If we go up one more slide, yep. So on the right-hand side here, as the building turns the corner, so to kind of orient, on the bottom of the page is Buckeye. On the right-hand side, so as the building turns, that is Woodhill. That future tenant is slated to be an early childhood learning center, which is greatly needed in the community. I offer that because next to that on the site plan, our playground and green space really meant to support that. We've been working with the Division of Engineering and Traffic and RTA to accommodate some cut-in on-street parking there so folks can drop off their little ones and pick up their little ones as part of that ground floor. You can see the materials, again, very similar to what has been proposed and what is being utilized with the previous phase. And then the next couple slides show kind of where we sit from a design standpoint. Very similar from the materials of what's in that first phase. We are, I'm going to use a very technical architectural term, we are not matchy-matchy with the first phase because we don't want everything to feel like it is, frankly speaking, like the current Woodhill Estate, where every building is the exact same. There isn't a lot of texture. So again, it's a lot of the same material, but we're using it a little bit differently. If we go to the next slide, that kind of shows how this phase works in conjunction with the one that's under construction. You can kind of see there the slope of Buckeye as it's moving down. One thing of note that I want to make sure that everybody kind of understands is directly across the site. So really, if we were in a drone from this view, what would be underneath us is the RTA transit stop. So this is TOD in its pure essence. And working with Woodhill community residents, less than half have access to a personal vehicle. So again, I want to commend our clients, the community builders, CMHA and others in really committing to TOD from an affordable standpoint. We're very happy and very privileged to be part of this project and part of the initiative. So I think in the interest of time, Madam Chair, I'm gonna pause there and see if there's any questions.
No, it's great presentation. So great project. We'll open it up. I'm going to start by obviously we've been seeing this multiple times and stuff's under construction. It's amazing, just transformative in all ways for this neighborhood, and That's how I feel.
Yeah, I agree with the material change. I actually like the new composition of the building in terms of materials. One question I have, there's like a stairway with it seems to be some graphic art
Yes.
on that. Is that something that is, artist driven? Is that something that internally the design team is doing? Or is that just like for the render's sake?
Great question. Can I address that, Lillian, through you, through Chair? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yes, so that is not, it is a public art opportunity, is not going to be architect driven. We are not community artists. We are partnered with Land Studio as part of a public art composition. So our kind of vision for that is that is a canvas right now, Drew, and that can be something that we really like to see a splash of color and that is reflective of the community.
My only other comment is that, like, I don't really want to see this 3 times because it's so
Thank
good.
you.
It's conceptual approval, but I'll leave it up to my commission members. I don't think that's necessary or required good use of your time or money for them paying you to do this. So,
Madam Chair, I'm sorry to
Yeah.
I should correct myself. We did go to design review for conceptual approval originally. They did grant us, I believe, schematic. So there is kind of the opportunity, and I would love to entertain either schematic or final at this meeting if possible. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I mean, I'm open to commission members because we can also do final, but they have to go back to staff. And if there are any issues they can't resolve from either staff or the community, they got to come back here. But it's just not a good use of resources, my opinion. This is so far advanced. I've never seen something conceptually this far advanced where there's a material change, right? So anyway, up to the commission.
I motion to approve them for final.
Would it maybe make a statement that it would come back to staff, and if they can't resolve it, it'll come back there.
With any issues going back to staff, and if not resolved, we'll resolve coming back to planning.
Okay. Does that make sense? It means though, even though you're getting final approval, there's a little bit of a distinction. Before the director is going to sign off on it, because you're going to come back, if there's anything unresolved, then it'll come back here. It doesn't mean you can go get your permit. She still has to sign off on it. Does that make sense?
Fully understood. Thank you.
Okay.
So I will work with Ken Scott.
Okay. Do you have a second?
I second.
Motion and a second. Can we call the roll?
Curry,
Yes.
Craig Scott,
Yes.
Sargent,
Yes.
White. Yes.
Motion carries. That's a good reason to come at the end in the Cliff Notes version right there.
Thank you. And can I just have 10 more seconds of your time?
Yes.
I want to commend Shannon Leonard for her work on the form-based code. I know that it's virtually impossible to reach consensus across 3 separate communities, let alone an entire city with her work. But she has done an amazing job, and we're on Team Shannon and the work that she's done, and look forward to kind of seeing what comes next with that. So thank you, Shannon. Appreciate you.
I don't want you to be, what's it called when you're so disappointed. So do not be defeated. We have persistence. So anyway, before we go back to see if anybody's online, can someone get August and take a look at the administrative approvals, and I'll go back and see if the other people are online. So we have a list of 8 administrative approvals, and then I'll need a motion on those.
That's fast.
Yeah, that was fast.
So Alex, to
Good
hurry up.
decision.
Yeah.
That's good logic.
Anybody have any issues or conflicts with the administrative approvals? There's quite a few in there,
You
but
want to check to see if he's 2018 this school year?
we're going after we do this.
I'm
We're
sorry.
doing this first. Administrative
Madam
approval.
Chair, I move to approve the approvals as presented.
Second.
We have motion and second. Call the roll.
Booker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
Craig Scott.
Yes.
Sargent,
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Motion carries. So let's see, is Kevin Oliver on? Is Laura Stosa? I'm not gonna try to say it. All right, then let's keep going and we'll see. They got a few more minutes to see if they come on. So item 9 is an ordinance designating West Clinton. It's 1372-2033, designating West Clinton Avenue from 58th to 65th with a secondary honorary.
It's not administrative.
Oh,
We're
that
done.
was administrative. Oh, wait, no, we have one more, sorry, which is one member. Look, Gabriel White. who's an architecture urban designer. She is being nominated for the Northeast Design Review List. We have her resume.
Madam Chair, if I may, she is a part of Robert P. Madison International
Okay.
and has been onboarded as a project manager. She actually is part of the Lakefront project as well. So she's been a great urban design addition. We believe that she'll be a great design review committee.
Can I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second,
Second. Can we call the roll?
Blucher,
yes.
Curry,
Yes.
McCray Scott,
Yes.
Sarver,
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Motion carried. Yeah.
If ours in the meeting.
All right, we're gonna have to go fast on this one. So Kevin, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as you shall answer to the penalty of perjury?
Yes.
Okay, so this is 118th Street Residences, new construction, 1555 East 118th Street. You're gonna have to go very fast through this. So
Okay.
I know this is schematic approval, so you may want to also, since you've been through design review and they have their comments, kind of go through and especially just maybe hit the highlights.
Absolutely. So we're proposing a multifamily project that is 2 buildings on a consolidated parcel at East 118th Street. You can see the colored buildings are the new ones, and the white ones are 2 existing 2-family residences that are remaining on the site. So our project wraps around the back of that. If you go to the next slide. This kind of shows our site context relative to East 118th, proximity to Case Western. Next slide. Some of the context on the street, excuse me, the top row are the adjacent properties. The bottom row shows the current condition of our project parcel. In the middle on the bottom, the right vacant lot is where the first section of building will be, and that house there is an existing house to remain. Next slide. And so this shows our site plan where we're keeping the 2 houses in the front. We have an access drive with the longer building on the south, and then a smaller building that wraps around at the north. Limited parking we're proposing for this project. The market is mainly case students, nurses, doctors, residents. We have proximity to a lot of connectors, transit, and as well as we're providing indoor bike storage areas at the first floor for tenants as well. Next slide, please. Again, this shows some of the connectors and the various transit that is close to our project site. Next slide. Floor plans won't go into it in too much detail, but basically it's a combination of 2-bedroom and 4-bedroom units. The first floor units are 2-bedroom units, accessible type B units, and then the upper units are the 4-bedroom units. They aren't townhomes, but they're configured similarly to townhomes. And then with the front units facing East 118th with a porch area, and then the rest of the internal units face internal to the courtyard. The next few slides are additional floor plans.
I think maybe we have enough. Any questions, comments about this?
Oh, these are 4 stories.
These are 4 stories. If you, 4 stories brick. If you saw, go back to the 3D, or do you have a 3D one at the end? Like the 3D one at the beginning?
I'll be sure.
I know. There was it's at the beginning. So yeah, there it is. My only quick question, has there obviously this went to local and it's UCI area. Was there a neighborhood engagement in this project?
The property owners have been in contact with the immediate neighbors on either side of it. There hasn't been a specific neighborhood engagement meeting. They had reached out to UCI, hadn't gotten necessarily specific direction as to here's who you need to speak to. So that's where we are at this point.
But adjacent, the kind of contiguous adjacent property owners have been aware and contacted.
Correct.
Okay.
And our owners talk to them about street parking availability, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
Well, Madam Chair, I move to approve as presented.
This is schematic, by the way.
Yeah,
So
just to go to the designer slide quickly, just so.
there was nothing. It was
there
approved
was-
as presented. There
Yeah.
was approved as
It has
presented.
to be presented, I'm sorry.
I missed that, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Right, I hold my motion.
yes.
I'll second.
Motion is second for schematic approval. Michael, call the roll.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
Prescott,
Yes.
Sergeant,
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, thank you all very much. I know we're probably not gonna have time for a director's report, but maybe like a 2-second, anything, you wanna say in 2 seconds?
Yeah, no director's report, except that next week is, December 15th, which is our next meeting, is our very last one for the year, and we will have a commission lunch following that session, along with a few key members of the staff. And then, I do want to add that we may have a full commission
Yay.
next session with a new member hopefully joining us, as well as, at least 6 with our voting packet. So we're glad for that. Thank you to Commission Member Kluger for his help at the table council for Townhouse Code, which was finally passed. Thanks to Shannon and her help.
Oh, this window
for finance
dressing.
and finance. So we will have a new Townhouse Code.
Thank you.
Do you think we'll, see the, before the end of the year, will we see that back on the form base next week, next
We'll see
meeting?
more base next time.
Okay.
We'll talk.
We adjourned.
I mean, I.
We're adjourned.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.